They called her the shame of the Bennett name, a bastard, a stain. At a gala dripping with diamonds and cruelty, Chloe Bennett was hunted by men who wanted to own her and mocked by women who wanted her broken. Her own father had thrown her into that pit of wolves like bait. Then he walked in, Dominic Russo, the most dangerous man in the city, and everything shattered. One look, one dance, one kiss that burned the entire room to ash. If you want to know how a discarded girl rose to conquer an empire, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The chandelier above the Bennett estate ballroom held 42,000 crystals. Chloe had counted them once when she was 15 and hiding behind the service staircase from a party she had not been invited to. She remembered because her mother had been dying in a hospital across town that night, and her father had not canceled the event. Now, 7 years later, she stood beneath those same crystals in a borrowed dress, and she still felt like she was hiding. The dress was the color of old wine, a deep, bruised red her stepmother had chosen specifically because it would not flatter her. Victoria Bennett had a gift for cruelty that wore the face of generosity. She had pressed the gown into Chloe's hands that afternoon with a smile sharp enough to draw blood. "Try not to embarrass your father tonight, darling," she had said. "People will be watching." People were always watching. That was the worst part. Chloe moved along the edge of the ballroom like something that didn't quite belong to the room, which, of course, she didn't. Waiters in white gloves floated past her with trays of champagne. A string quartet played something old and expensive near the marble staircase. Men in black tuxedos leaned toward women in jewels, and every single one of them knew who she was. The bastard, the mistake, the inconvenience Arthur Bennett had never bothered to hide well enough. "Chloe, darling, come here." She turned at the sound of her stepmother's voice and felt her stomach drop the way it always did. Victoria was standing with 3 other women by the champagne fountain, all of them in white or ivory or champagne gold, all of them looking at her like she was something the caterers had forgotten to clean up. "Come meet my friends," Victoria said, and her smile was a blade wrapped in silk. Chloe went because she had no choice. She had been going when she was called her entire life. It was the first thing you learned in Arthur Bennett's house. You came when called, you left when dismissed, and you did not, under any circumstances, make a sound in between. "This is Chloe," Victoria said, with the tone of someone introducing a stain on the carpet. "Arthur's, well, you know." The women made small noises of sympathy that weren't sympathy at all. "Oh, the daughter," one of them said. She was blonde, sharp-cheeked, wearing a necklace that probably cost more than the house Chloe's mother had died in. "I've heard so much." "I'm sure you have," Chloe said before she could stop herself. Victoria's eyes narrowed a fraction. It was the only warning she ever gave. "She has her mother's mouth," Victoria said lightly, and the other women laughed. "Oh, the mother," the blonde said. What was she? A waitress?" "A dancer," another corrected. "A dancer. How charming. And did she dance with Arthur, or just for him?" The laughter was louder now. Chloe felt her face burn and her hands curl into fists at her sides. She could taste the humiliation in the back of her throat, like copper. Her mother had been a music teacher. Her mother had played piano in a church basement for 20 years for free because she believed children should have something beautiful in their lives even if they had nothing else. Her mother had been worth 10 of every woman in this room, and she had died on a cracked vinyl hospital bed because Arthur Bennett had not sent the money for the better hospital in time. Chloe opened her mouth to say something, anything, and then closed it again, because across the room she had seen him, her father. Arthur Bennett was laughing with a United States senator. He had not looked at her once since she'd walked into the ballroom, but she knew he had seen her. He saw everything. That was the first rule of her father. He saw. And he decided what the scene was worth, and then he moved on. Tonight, apparently, she was worth nothing. "Excuse me," Chloe said quietly, and she walked away before the women could pretend to stop her. She found a balcony off the east corridor. It was cold, late October in the city, and the river down below was black and slow. But she didn't care. She wrapped her bare arms around herself and tried to breathe. Just a few more hours, she told herself. Just survive a few more hours, and you can go back to your apartment and burn this dress. Except she couldn't burn the dress. It wasn't hers. Nothing in her life was hers. She was 22 years old. She had a degree in art history that her father hadn't paid for because she'd put herself through school waiting tables at a diner in Queens. She lived in a studio the size of a closet above a laundromat. She had one friend, a girl named Raina, who worked at the diner with her, and she had exactly $87 in her checking account. And once a year, her father summoned her to one of these parties. And she came because part of her still hoped, stupidly, pathetically, that this would be the night he would finally look at her and see his daughter. It had never been that night. It was never going to be that night. "You know," a voice said behind her, "you really shouldn't be out here alone." Chloe froze. The voice was male, low, and too pleased with itself. She turned slowly. He was standing in the doorway to the balcony, blocking it. Mid-30s, expensive suit, slicked hair, the kind of face that had probably been handsome before money and cocaine had gotten to it. She didn't know his name, but she knew his type. There were men like him at every one of these parties. They came to the Bennett house because her father did business with their fathers, and they always found her. "I'm fine," she said. "Just needed some air." "Air is better in company," he said, and he stepped onto the balcony and slid the door shut behind him. The sound of the door clicking closed did something ugly to her stomach. "Please move," she said. "Relax." He was smiling. His teeth were very white. "I just want to talk." "I don't." "Come on, sweetheart. I know who you are. Everybody knows who you are. You're Arthur's little secret." He took a step closer. "The little secret he doesn't guard very well." "Don't." "Don't what?" His hand caught her wrist. His grip was not gentle. "I'm being nice to you. You should be nice back. A girl like you don't get a lot of nice, do you? Let go of me." "Or what?" She yanked her arm, and his fingers tightened. Her heart was kicking against her ribs. She had been in this situation before. Not with this man, but with men like him. At parties like this, in hallways like the one behind him. And she knew how it ended. It ended with her running, and with nobody following, and with her father pretending she had never told him. "I said let go. You know what your problem is, sweetheart?" His face was close enough that she could smell the bourbon on him. "You act like you're something. You're not. You're the help. Get your hand off her." The voice came from behind him, and it was quiet. And it was the most dangerous sound Chloe had ever heard in her life. The man on the balcony froze. His face, very slowly, drained of color. Chloe looked past his shoulder. There was a man standing at the edge of the balcony door. He was tall. He was dressed in black. Not a tuxedo, just a black suit, simple, beautiful. The kind of simple that costs more than most people's cars. He had dark hair, cut short, and a jaw like something carved. His eyes were gray. Not blue-gray, not green-gray. Gray, like a blade, like a stone at the bottom of a cold river. She had never seen him before in her life, but the man holding her wrist had. The man holding her wrist had seen him and was, Chloe realized, about to start begging. "Mr. Russo, I didn't realize—" "Didn't realize what?" the man in black said. It wasn't a question. "That I didn't know she isn't with anyone." The gray eyes slid for a fraction of a second to Chloe's face, then back. "That's not what you didn't realize." "Sir, what you didn't realize," the man in black said, "is that she's a person, and you have your hand on her. Take it off." The hand came off her wrist so fast Chloe stumbled. I'll go." "You will." The gray eyes were steady. "And tomorrow morning you'll call my office. Because we need to have a conversation about what you thought you were doing in my city." Walk away, Halston, before I decide I don't want you to." The man, Halston, apparently, walked away. He walked so fast he almost tripped on the balcony door. And then he was gone, back into the ballroom, and Chloe was alone on a cold stone balcony with a man whose name, apparently, was enough to make grown men run. She was shaking. She didn't want to be shaking. She hated that she was shaking. She wrapped her arms around herself tighter and tried to make it stop. And it didn't stop. And the man in black was watching her. "Are you all right?" he said. And it wasn't a polite question. It sounded like he actually wanted to know. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was thinner than she wanted it to be. "You're not." "I am." "You're shaking." "I'm cold." A small, almost invisible thing happened to the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. The ghost of one. He took off his jacket, just took it off, and held it out to her. I don't need... Take it. She took it. The jacket was warm from him and smelled like something clean and expensive. Cedar, maybe, and something darker underneath. She pulled it around her shoulders, and it was much too big. Thank you, she said. What's your name? Chloe. Chloe what? She hesitated. Her name was a weapon in this room. Her name made people look at her like the women at the champagne fountain had looked at her. But his gray eyes were steady and unreadable, and she had already seen what he could do with a single sentence, and there seemed to be no point in lying. Bennett, she said. Chloe Bennett. Something flickered in his face. It was there and gone so fast she almost thought she'd imagined it. Arthur's daughter. Arthur's bastard, she said. Everyone makes sure to clarify. He looked at her for a long moment. Dominic Russo, he said. She knew the name. Of course she knew the name. Everybody in this city, everybody in this country, maybe everybody alive knew the name Russo. The Russo family had been in New York since before New York had skyscrapers. They owned shipping. They owned construction. They owned, if you believed half of what people whispered about them, the docks and the unions and a substantial percentage of every judge who had ever sat in a criminal court in the tri-state area. Her father had spoken the name Russo at the dinner table exactly once that she could remember, and he had spoken it the way other men spoke about hurricanes. Don't get in their way. Don't catch their attention. Don't make them decide they need you gone. And now Dominic Russo was standing on her father's balcony, in his shirt sleeves because his jacket was around her shoulders, and he had just put the fear of God into a man because that man had grabbed her wrist. I know who you are, she said. Her voice was quiet. I'd be surprised if you didn't. Why did you do that? Do what? With him, Halston. Dominic tilted his head slightly. He had his hand on you. You told him to let go. He didn't. Most men don't care about that. I'm not most men. She laughed. It came out shaky and wrong. No, I guess not. The silence between them stretched, but it didn't feel like the silences she was used to. The silences in her father's house were empty. This one had weight. You should go back in, he said finally. I don't want to. I know. Go back in anyway. Why? Because Halston just walked into that ballroom telling every man in it that he made Dominic Russo angry tonight, and every man in that ballroom is going to want to know why, and you're going to walk back in there on my arm so they stop asking. She stared at him. What? She said. Give me your hand, Miss Bennett. What? The ballroom, when they walked back into it, went quiet in waves. It was the strangest thing Chloe had ever experienced. The string quartet kept playing. The waiters kept pouring. But the people stopped. They stopped mid-conversation, mid-laugh, mid-sip, and they turned. Not quickly, not obviously, but inevitably, the way a whole field of sunflowers turns. And they looked. They looked at the man in black. And then they looked at the girl on his arm. Chloe felt the heat climb into her face, and she kept her chin up, because if she was going to be stared at, she was going to be stared at standing straight. Dominic's hand was under her elbow, not gripping, just there, steady as a shelf. The weight of it was the only thing keeping her from falling over. Breathe, he said, very low, so only she could hear. I am. You're not, she breathed. Across the room her father turned, and for the first time that night, Arthur Bennett looked at her. He looked at her, and he looked at the man beside her, and Chloe watched something happen to her father's face that she had never seen in her entire life. She watched Arthur Bennett turn pale. He started walking toward them. Dominic, her father said when he reached them. His voice was smooth. It was always smooth. But there was something underneath it now. Something she did not have a name for because she had never heard it before. Fear. It was fear. Arthur, I didn't realize you were attending tonight. I wasn't planning to, Dominic said. I changed my mind. I see. Her father's eyes flicked very briefly to Chloe. And I see you've met my daughter. Your daughter, Dominic repeated. Yes. Interesting word choice. Her father said nothing. Because what I walked into, Dominic said, and his voice was still low, still calm, still the most terrifying thing Chloe had ever heard, was a man named Halston putting his hands on a woman at your party. A woman who, when I arrived, was alone on a balcony because no one in your house was watching her. So I'm curious, Arthur, which is she? Your daughter? Or something you threw in the yard and forgot? Her father's jaw tightened. Dominic, don't. Dominic smiled. It did not reach his eyes. Don't insult me with an answer. I already have one. And then, to Chloe, he said, dance with me. She almost said no. She almost said I don't know how. She almost said people are watching. She almost said my father will kill me. But she looked at her father's face, at the way he was looking at her, like she was a weapon that had just gone off in his hand. And she looked at Dominic Russo, and she said, yes. He led her to the center of the ballroom. The quartet, reading the room with the terrified precision of people who played at these events for a living, shifted into something slower. A waltz. Chloe didn't know how to waltz. Her mother had taught her to dance once, barefoot on a kitchen floor, to a record that skipped, and that was the extent of her training. She was going to make a fool of herself. She was going to trip, and everyone was going to laugh, and, put your hand on my shoulder, Dominic said. I'll lead. Put your hand on my shoulder. She put her hand on his shoulder. His other hand settled at the small of her back, and she felt it all the way up her spine. He wasn't pulling her close. He wasn't making it indecent. But he was there, and she was aware of every point of contact like it was lit on fire. Look at me, he said. Not at them. At me. She looked at him. His gray eyes were steady on her face. Up close, she could see things she hadn't seen on the balcony. A small scar on his chin, old and thin, the faint shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. He was not handsome the way the men in her father's world were handsome. He was something else. He was the kind of face you'd see once and never forget. Tell me something, he said as he began to move her, gently, expertly, so she didn't even have to think about her feet. Why are you here tonight? Because he told me to come. Does he always tell you to come? Once a year. Why? I think he likes to know where I am. He likes to know I still answer. And you always answer. I always answer. His hand on her back was very warm. Why? She didn't know how to explain it. She didn't know how to say because even though he has never loved me, he is the only father I have, and some stupid little part of me keeps hoping. She didn't know how to say because I am alone and he is not, and I keep thinking maybe one day I won't have to be. So she said, I don't know. Yes, you do. Fine. I do. I just don't want to tell you. Fair, he said. Tell me this instead. What did the women at the fountain say to you? Her jaw clenched. How did you... I was watching. Since when? Since you walked in. The heat climbed up her neck again. I don't need you to defend me. I didn't say you did. Then I said I was watching. They were turning slowly in the center of the floor. Everyone was watching them. No one was even pretending not to. There's a difference. Chloe let out a breath. It was shaky. They asked about my mother. What did they ask? If she was a dancer or a waitress. They thought that was very funny. And what was she? A music teacher. She played piano. Something shifted in his face. Not pity. She would have hated pity. It was something else. Something quieter and more careful. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be. She was the best thing about my life. Them laughing at her doesn't change that. No, he agreed. It doesn't. They turned again. The music was swelling. Around the edges of the ballroom, people were whispering. Chloe could feel it like static on her skin. Who is she? Why is she dancing with him? Does Arthur know? Of course Arthur knows. Look at his face. Is she his mistress? She's too young. She's his... Miss Bennett. Chloe. Just Chloe. Please. Chloe. He said it like he was testing it. I'm going to do something. I want you to know I'm going to do it before I do it. Do what? I'm going to kiss you. She stopped breathing. Why? She managed. Because every man in this room is currently deciding whether he can still try to touch you once I leave. I want that question settled before I go. That's... Her mouth had gone dry. That's not a reason to kiss someone. No, he agreed. It isn't. His hand at her back spread slightly. But I'm not going to lie to you about what it is. You get to say no. She stared at him. The music was still playing. The crystals above them were still throwing little rainbows across the floor. Somewhere, she knew, her father was watching. Somewhere, the women at the champagne fountain were watching. Somewhere, the men were watching. The Halstons, the ones who had followed her into hallways at parties like this since she was 17. She had spent her entire life being passed over and pawed at and whispered about. She had spent her entire life being nothing. And a man she didn't know, a man who could have killed another man with a sentence and hadn't, was asking her if he could kiss her and telling her she could say no. Don't be sweet about it, she heard herself say. Excuse me. If you're going to do it to make a point, do it like you mean the point. Dominic Russo looked at her, and something happened in the back of his gray eyes that she would think about for a long time afterward. Yes, ma'am, he said, and he kissed her. It was not a polite kiss. He'd warned her, and he'd meant it. He kissed her like a man staking a claim in front of an army, one hand still at the small of her back and the other coming up to cradle her jaw, his thumb against the edge of her cheekbone. The ballroom went absolutely silent. The quartet fumbled a note. Somewhere, she heard it. She swore to God she heard it. A champagne flute hit the floor. Chloe had been kissed before. 3 times. 2 of them in college. One of them by a boy at the diner who'd asked her out twice and then stopped coming in when she'd said no the second time. None of those kisses had prepared her for this one. This one reorganized her spine. When he pulled back, she was gripping the front of his shirt. She let go. Her hand was shaking. His gray eyes were watching her face, and he was not smiling, but there was something soft in them that she was absolutely not going to think about right now. Okay, she said. Her voice did not sound like her own. Okay? Point made. Something, barely, tugged at his mouth. Good. And then he stepped back, took her hand, and turned with her toward the edge of the dance floor. Her father was there. Arthur Bennett was standing at the edge of the floor, and he was the color of wet ash. Victoria was beside him, her mouth a thin line. And behind them, a crowd, a whole crowd, that had watched the whole thing. Dominic, her father said. His voice was tight. Arthur. What is this? This, Dominic said, is your daughter, who you did not, if I may say, introduce to me properly. I had to introduce myself. His hand tightened, just a fraction, on Chloe's. I'm going to borrow her. We have things to discuss. You can't. I can. Dominic smiled. I really can, Arthur. Think about it for a second and you'll remember why. Her father's jaw worked. He said nothing. Good, Dominic said pleasantly, and then to Chloe, come with me. She went. She went because her father's face, at that moment, was the face of a man watching a door he had always thought was locked come open. She went because every woman at the champagne fountain was now looking at her like she had turned into something they did not have a word for. She went because she had spent her entire life walking when she was told to, and for once, she was walking somewhere that was not her father's command. She went because Dominic Russo's hand was warm around hers, and because he had asked. Eat. He took her to a small sitting room off the main corridor. It was lined with books no one in her father's house had ever read. He shut the door behind them and let go of her hand, and the second he did, she sat down on the nearest chair because her legs were done. Breathe, he said for the second time that night. Stop saying that. Then breathe so I can stop saying it. She breathed. For a long minute, she just breathed. Dominic did not sit. He stood by the fireplace with his hands in his pockets, watching her, and he waited. Why are you really here? She said finally. Tonight? Yes. Business. With my father. With your father. What kind of business? He considered her. The kind of business, he said, that your father is about to lose. Because of what just happened. In part, Chloe looked at her hands. Her fingernails were bitten. She had always bitten her fingernails, and her stepmother had always hated it. Why did you do all of that? She said. All of it. The balcony, the dance, the kiss. Why? Because I walked in, and I saw you being laughed at by women who aren't fit to look at you, and then I saw a man with his hand on you, and I made a decision. That's not a reason? It's a reason. It's a reason you'd give to somebody else. Tell me the real one. Dominic was quiet for a long time. The fire was very low. The clock on the mantel ticked. Finally, he said, I knew your mother. Chloe's head came up. What? I knew your mother, Chloe, a long time ago. She taught my little sister piano for 2 years when my sister was 8. She was... He paused. She was kind to my family at a time when my family was not a family people were kind to. I remember her. Chloe's eyes were burning. She hated that. She blinked hard. She never told me, she said. She wouldn't have. She didn't know who we were, not really. She just knew a child who wanted to learn. That sounds like her. It does, doesn't it? Chloe pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. When I walked in tonight, Dominic said, very quietly, I saw you, and I saw her in you, and then I saw what this room was doing to you, and I thought about what she would say to me if she were alive, and if she could see what her daughter had been reduced to in her father's house. What would she say? I think she would say, do something about it, Dominic. Chloe made a sound. It was half a laugh and half something much worse. It broke in the middle. He crossed the room. He didn't touch her. He crouched down in front of her chair so that his gray eyes were level with hers, and he waited until she looked at him. I want to offer you something, he said. And I want you to know, before I offer it, that you can say no. And nothing that happened tonight changes. The Halstons of this city will still not touch you. Your father will still have seen what he saw. You walk away from tonight safer than you walked in, whatever you decide. Okay, I'm going to marry you, Chloe. She did not at first understand the words. They went past her. I'm sorry, she said. What? I'm going to marry you, or I'm going to ask to, and you're going to decide. But I want you to understand what I'm offering you because it isn't a fairy tale, and I'm not going to dress it up. I'm offering you my name, my protection, a place at the top of this city. Your father cannot touch you. No Halston will ever be in a room with you again. You will never sit at the edge of anyone's ballroom for the rest of your life. Dominic, I'm not finished. In return, he paused. So, in return, I need a wife. I need a woman at my side who is not afraid of this world, and who can learn it, and who can, when the time comes, be a partner to me in it. Not a decoration, a partner. I have watched you tonight, Chloe Bennett, and I believe you can be that. I believe you have been that your whole life, and nobody has given you a room big enough to prove it in. She couldn't speak. You don't have to answer tonight, he said. You don't have to answer tomorrow. But you have to understand what I'm asking. This is not a kindness. This is not a rescue. I need what I'm asking you for. And I think you might need what I'm offering. So I am telling you the truth. And then I am going to leave you alone and let you think. He stood up. He set a card on the little table beside her chair. Just a card. Thick cream paper. A phone number in black ink. No name. When you decide, he said, call that number. Day or night. Say yes or say no. Either answer will be heard and kept. Dominic. He stopped at the door. Why me? She said. Her voice was very small. Out of every woman in that ballroom, why me? Dominic Russo looked at her for a long moment. Because when I told you I was going to kiss you, he said, and I told you why, you told me to mean it. And then he opened the door, and he was gone. Well, she sat alone in the sitting room for a long time. The fire burned down to red coals. Somewhere beyond the door, the gala went on. The laughter, the music, the quartet sawing through another old piece that no one was listening to. Chloe's jacket, his jacket, still around her shoulders, smelled like cedar and something darker, and she couldn't stop touching the sleeve. On the table, the card sat where he had put it. When she finally stood up, she did it slowly. Her legs were stiff. Her lip was raw where she had been biting it. She picked up the card. She looked at the number. She put it, very carefully, into the small silk clutch her stepmother had loaned her, the only part of the outfit that was hers to put anything in. She walked out of the sitting room. She walked down the corridor. She walked through the ballroom. And the ballroom was quieter now, because people were already leaving, because an evening could not recover from what they had just seen. The women at the champagne fountain did not speak to her. They did not even look at her. They looked at their glasses and their husbands and the floor. Her father was standing at the foot of the grand staircase. He was not smiling. "Chloe," he said, and for the first time in her life, her name in his mouth sounded like a man saying the name of someone he did not fully own. "Yes, father." "Come. We need to talk." She looked at him. She looked at him the way she had never in 22 years looked at him before. She looked at him like a stranger. "No," she said. "I'm sorry." "No, father. We don't." She walked past him. She walked up the grand staircase because she did not have a coat of her own, and she needed to get to her own room to get her bag, and she could feel him watching her, and for the first time in her life, the first time, she did not shrink under the watching. In the guest room her stepmother had assigned her, she took off the wine-colored dress. She folded it neatly on the bed. She put on her jeans and her sweater and her cheap black coat. She folded Dominic's tuxedo jacket over her arm because she wasn't going to leave it. She wasn't going to leave a single thing of his in this house. Her hand went once to the silk clutch, to the card inside it. She looked at herself in the mirror. She was pale. Her eyes were red. Her hair was coming down on one side. And she was, for the first time in her life, looking at a woman who had a choice. She did not know yet what she was going to choose, but she knew with an absolute certainty that rearranged something inside her chest, that she was going to be the one who chose it. Chloe Bennet picked up her bag. She turned off the light, and she walked out of her father's house. The subway at 1 in the morning smelled like wet concrete and old newsprint, and Chloe Bennet had never been so grateful for anything in her life. She sat in the corner of the car with her cheap black coat buttoned up to her chin, and Dominic's tuxedo jacket folded across her lap like a secret. Across from her, a man was asleep with his mouth open. A woman 2 seats down was crying quietly into a phone. The fluorescent light flickered. Somewhere the train hit a bad rail, and the whole car lurched, and Chloe put a hand down on the jacket to keep it from sliding off, and she realized her hand was still shaking. It had not stopped shaking since the balcony. She looked out the black window at her own reflection. The woman looking back at her did not look like a woman who had just walked out of Arthur Bennett's house. She looked like what she had always looked like, pale, tired, a little hungry, hair coming down on one side. But her eyes were different. Chloe leaned forward and squinted at the window, and the woman in the glass squinted back, and Chloe thought, "Who are you now?" She didn't know yet. That was the honest answer. She did not know. The train pulled into her stop, and she got off and climbed the stairs into the cold. And the cold smelled like her actual life again. Car exhaust, bodega coffee, the faint sourness of the laundromat 2 doors down from her building. She unlocked the front door with a key that had stuck in the cold since October. She climbed 3 flights of stairs that creaked the way they always creaked. She let herself into a studio apartment that was 900 square feet on paper and about half that in reality, and she stood in the middle of it in her coat, and she didn't turn the light on. The card was in her clutch. She took it out. She set it on the little kitchen table where she ate her cereal. She sat down across from it, still in her coat, and she looked at it the way you look at something that might bite you. A phone number. No name. Black ink on cream paper. It should not have weighed as much as it did. "Don't be stupid, Chloe," she said to the empty apartment. The apartment did not argue with her. She thought about what he had said. She thought about the way he had said it. Not romantic, not pleading, not even particularly kind. "I am not offering you a fairy tale. I need what I am asking you for. I think you might need what I am offering." She had liked that, and she hated that she had liked that. Sweet words were cheap. She had eaten sweet words from her father her whole life, promises he forgot by morning. Dominic Rousseau had not given her sweet words. He had given her a straight, cold accounting, and he had told her that she could say no. She had never, not once in 22 years, been told she could say no to anything that mattered. She picked up the card. She put it down. She picked it up again. Her phone buzzed on the table and she almost screamed. It was Raina. The text said, "You alive, Bennett," which was how Raina opened most conversations. Chloe almost cried from the sheer human normalness of it. She wrote back, "Yes, weird night." The dots appeared. Define weird. Chloe stared at the phone for a long time, and then she wrote, "I think I might get married." The dots disappeared, came back. disappeared again. Then her phone rang. "Chloe," Raina said when she picked up. "If that was a joke, it was a bad one, and I will beat you. If that wasn't a joke, put pants on because I'm getting into a cab. I'm already wearing pants. Then put shoes on because I'm still getting into a cab." "Raina." "Nope. I'm coming. I'm bringing the bad wine. Sit still." The line went dead. Chloe set the phone down. She looked at the card on the table. She looked at Dominic's jacket folded over the back of her one-arm chair, the jacket she could not stop touching. She put her face in her hands for a long moment, and she breathed, and nobody had to tell her to this time. Raina Ortiz arrived 40 minutes later with a bottle of $8 red wine, a bag of gas station popcorn, and the particular expression of a best friend who had been mentally rehearsing lectures the entire cab ride. She took one look at Chloe, at her red eyes, at the tuxedo jacket on the chair, at the card on the table, and dropped all of it on the counter. "Okay," Raina said. "Tell me everything, from the top. And don't skip anything, Bennett, because I swear to God, if you skip anything, I will know," Chloe told her. She told her about the dress, about Victoria at the champagne fountain, about the women laughing about her mother, about the balcony and Halston's hand on her wrist, about the voice behind him, about the man in black, about the jacket, about the ballroom going silent, about the dance, about the kiss, about the sitting room with the low fire and the words, "I'm going to marry you," spoken by a man who had not even raised his voice to make them happen. When she was finished, Raina sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. "Okay," Raina said. "Okay? I need a second. My brain's catching up." "Take your time." Raina took a long drink straight from the wine bottle. She wiped her mouth with the back of her wrist. She looked at the card on the table. "Chloe." "What?" "Chloe, that's Dominic Russo." "I know. That's Dominic Russo." "I know, Raina. My cousin Marco delivers seafood to one of his restaurants. He told me once he saw Dominic Russo eat dinner, just eat dinner, and he said the whole dining room ate quieter." "Raina, I'm saying it's a thing, Chloe. It's a whole thing. You can't just... You can't... I know I can't just... But you're thinking about it." Chloe did not answer. Raina stared at her. "Oh my God, you're thinking about it." "I'm not." "You're looking at the card." "I'm allowed to look at the card. I'm not calling it." "But you haven't thrown it away." I will." "When?" "Soon." "Chloe." Chloe pressed her fingers into her temples. "Raina, you weren't there. You didn't see the way my father looked at me. You didn't see those women. That Halston guy. He had his hand on me, Raina, and nobody stopped him. Nobody in that whole ballroom stopped him. 100 people in one room, and not one of them..." Her voice cracked. She stopped. She took a breath. "And Dominic Russo walked up behind him and made him beg, with a sentence. And then he gave me his jacket because I was cold." "Chloe, the man is a criminal." "I know what he is." "You don't know what he is, that's the problem." "Then tell me what I don't know, Raina, because from where I was standing tonight, the criminals were wearing my father's last name." The room went quiet. Raina put the bottle down. She rubbed her eyes. "That's fair," she said, low. "That's fair. I'm sorry." "It's okay." "It's not okay. I know what Arthur is. I've always known what Arthur is. I shouldn't have... Raina, I don't want you to trade one cage for a prettier one, Bennett. That's all. I don't care if he kissed you like the world was ending. I don't care if he looked at you like you were the last real thing in a room full of fakes. You've been in a cage your whole life. I want you out. Not in a new one. Out." Chloe sat down on this bed next to her friend. She leaned her head on Raina's shoulder. Raina's sweater smelled like the diner, like old fryer oil and the cheap lavender detergent Raina bought in bulk. And Chloe thought, this is home. This is what home has always smelled like. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she said quietly. "Yeah, I figured. I'm not going to call him tonight." "Good. But I'm not going to throw the card away tonight either." Raina was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Okay. Okay? You're 22 years old, Chloe, and tonight is the first night I have ever, in the 6 years I've known you, heard you say, 'I'm not going to' about something. You're not throwing the card away. Fine. You're not calling him either. Also fine. Both of those are decisions. I'm not going to be the one who takes your first real decision away from you. Chloe closed her eyes. I love you, she said. Yeah. No, I'm saying it. I love you. You're the only good thing in my life. You're going to make me cry, Bennett, and I don't do that. Then let's not. They sat on the edge of the bed, side by side, and they passed the bottle back and forth. They did not speak much. The radiator ticked. Somewhere below, on the street, a car alarm went off and stopped and went off again. Chloe looked at the card on the table across the room, and she let her mind, for the first time that night, actually go where it had been trying to go. She thought about what her mother would have said. Her mother, who had played piano for free in a church basement. Her mother, who had taught a little girl named Russo how to find middle C with her thumb. Her mother, who had died on a cracked vinyl bed because Arthur Bennett had not sent the money for the better hospital in time. Chloe had asked her father once why the money had not come. She had been 17. He had looked at her. She still remembered the look. She would always remember the look. And he had said, "Chloe, sweetheart, do you know how expensive that hospital was?" She had looked at the gold cufflinks in her father's cuffs, and she had not answered. That was the night she had understood, for the first time, that the word father in her case was a joke that only her mother had ever not gotten. She didn't know what her mother would have said about Dominic Russo. She didn't, but she knew. She knew with a kind of certainty that settled into her chest like a stone finding its resting place, that her mother would not have wanted her to stay in Arthur Bennett's orbit for one more year. One more party, one more hallway, one more Halston. Her mother would have wanted her out, whatever out meant. The next morning, Chloe went to work. The diner was on the corner of 8th and 32nd, a long, narrow place with a counter and 8 booths and a waitress named Dolly, who had been there since the Carter administration. Chloe came in at 6 and tied her apron and did the coffee and did the refills, and at 11 o'clock, a car she had never seen before pulled up outside. It was black, it was long, it was polished to a mirror shine, and it double parked in a way only a car with a certain kind of plate could double park in New York without getting ticketed. A man got out of the back. He wasn't Dominic. He was older, maybe 50, in a gray suit with a plain gold wedding ring and a face that gave nothing away. He walked into the diner, and every conversation at every booth went a little quieter, the way the ballroom had gone a little quieter. And he walked up to the counter where Chloe was refilling the sugar caddy, and he said, "Miss Bennett." Chloe went still. "Yes? My name is Lorenzo. I work for Mr. Russo." He did not sit down. He did not take off his coat. "He asked me to deliver something to you. He did not want it sent by courier." Chloe's hands were suddenly cold. "Okay." Lorenzo set a plain white envelope on the counter. No name, no address. "There is no pressure attached," he said. His voice was level. "Mr. Russo asked me to be specific about that. He said, and I'm quoting him, miss, 'Tell her this is information, not a request. She still owes me no answer.'" Chloe stared at the envelope. "What is it?" "I don't know, miss. I was not told. I was told to deliver it to you personally, and to make sure you understood there is no pressure attached." "Okay? Is there anything you'd like me to tell him?" No. Thank you." "Very good, miss." He left the way he had come. The car pulled away. Every booth in the diner stared at Chloe. Dolly, behind the counter, slowly put down her coffee pot. "Chloe." "Don't, Dolly." "Chloe, honey. Don't." Dolly did not, but her eyes followed Chloe as Chloe picked up the envelope, untied her apron with hands that were shaking all over again, and walked into the back office to open it. There was no letter inside. There was a photograph. Old, creased around the edges. It was of a woman in a sundress sitting on a porch step, a little girl of maybe 4 or 5 on her lap. The little girl had dark hair and 2 messy pigtails. The woman had Chloe's eyes. Chloe made a sound. It was not a word. She put her hand over her mouth. Her mother. And she realized slowly, turning the photograph in her hand, not just her mother. Her mother and her mother's older sister Dana, who Chloe had only ever heard of in half sentences her mother had stopped finishing. Her mother had not spoken to her sister since before Chloe was born. Chloe had asked about Dana exactly once, when she was 9, and her mother had said very quietly, "We were raised different, baby. and it made us different and had never spoken of her again. On the back of the photograph, in blue ballpoint pen, in a hand Chloe did not recognize, someone had written, Elena and Dana, Summer, Jersey Shore. That was all. Chloe sat down on the desk chair in the back office of the diner, and she put the photograph in her lap, and she pressed her hand over her mouth, and she cried for the first time since her mother's funeral. She cried not because the photograph was sad. She cried because she was 22 years old, and she had exactly one photograph of her mother in this world, one small framed picture on her nightstand from a school field day in 2003, and now there were two. And the man who had sent her the second one had not asked for anything back. She took the photograph home that night. She sat with it on her kitchen table for a long time. She looked at her mother's face. She looked at the card from last night, still sitting where she had left it. She looked at the photograph again. She did not call the number that night, or the next. But on the third day, something happened. It was a Wednesday. The sky was low and gray. Chloe was walking home from the diner at 4 in the afternoon when she realized she was being followed. She didn't know how she knew. There was a feeling at the back of her neck, a crawl, an itch. She glanced in the reflection of a storefront window, and behind her, half a block back, a man was walking in the same rhythm she was. Tall, heavy-set, dark coat. She couldn't see his face. She turned a corner she did not usually turn. He turned it too. Her heart started to hammer. She went into a coffee shop she did not usually go into. She ordered a black coffee she did not want. She sat at a table near the window, and she waited. He did not come in. He stood across the street, pretending to look at a phone, pretending not to watch her. She knew him. She realized she knew him. She had not seen his face the other night on the balcony. Not really, but she remembered a shape. She remembered the breadth of the shoulders. She remembered Halston's voice saying, I'll go. It was Halston, or one of Halston's men, which was the same thing. Chloe sat at the little round table with her untouched black coffee, and she looked at the man across the street, and she felt, for the first time since Sunday night, truly afraid. Not the ordinary afraid she had lived with her whole life. A specific afraid. The kind of afraid that said, somebody saw what happened at that party, and somebody decided they weren't done with you. Her hand went into her coat pocket. The card was there. It had been there for 3 days. She had carried it with her without admitting she was carrying it with her. She pulled it out. She looked at the number. Her phone was in her other pocket. Her hand was shaking. She did not call Dominic Russo yet. She called Raina first because she wanted one person in the world to know. Raina picked up on the first ring the way Raina always did, and Chloe said low into the phone, Raina, I'm at the coffee place on 34th. There's a man across the street. I think he's one of Halston's. Chloe, I'm not making it up. I'm looking at him. Okay. Don't go outside. Stay in the shop. I'm going to call somebody. Stay put. Raina, who are you going to call? The cops are not going to... I'm not calling the cops, Chloe. Then who? Chloe, are you really asking me that right now? Call the number. Chloe closed her eyes. Okay, she said. Okay. Stay put until he gets there. Okay. She hung up with Raina. She sat very still for a long moment. Her hand was steady now, that strange steadiness that sometimes came to her when she was past being frightened, when some older, colder part of her took over. She looked at the card. She looked at the man across the street, who was still pretending to read his phone. She dialed the number. It rang once. Russo. Just the one word. Low. Quick. Not a question. Chloe's mouth went dry. Dominic, she said, it's Chloe. There was a silence on the other end of the line. It was not a long silence, but it was a full one. Then, Chloe, where are you? A coffee shop on 34th and 9th. There's a man across the street. I'm pretty sure he's with Halston. Describe him. Tall, heavy, dark coat, brown hair. I can't see his face clearly, but he's been behind me since I left work. Stay where you are. I am. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't go to the counter. Sit in the window where I can see you when I come in and sit facing the door. Okay? Are you alone in the shop? No, there's 2 other people at tables and a girl at the counter. Good. Stay there. Dominic, I'm 7 minutes away. Okay? Chloe. Yes. I'm glad you called. The line clicked. She sat in the window. She sat facing the door. She did not touch her coffee. Her hands were in her lap, and she watched the door, and she watched the man across the street, and the 7 minutes went by as slowly as any 7 minutes of her life. The black car pulled up at the curb exactly when he had said it would. Lorenzo got out from the driver's side. And Dominic, in a plain wool coat this time, not the black suit, looking somehow larger in normal clothes than he had in formal ones, got out of the back, and he did not even look at her through the window. He looked with a long, quiet, evaluating look across the street at the man pretending to read his phone. The man looked up. The man saw Dominic Russo. The man turned and walked away so fast he almost jogged. Dominic watched him go. He did not send Lorenzo after him. He did not send anyone. He watched the man turn the corner and disappear. And then, only then, he walked into the coffee shop. Chloe stood up from her chair before she knew she was going to. Sit, he said gently. She sat. He took the chair across from her. Lorenzo stayed outside, standing on the sidewalk with his hands folded in front of him, looking at nothing and watching everything. The girl at the counter had gone very still. One of the other customers had picked up their bag and was leaving, quickly. Dominic didn't notice. Or rather, he noticed and did not care. Are you hurt? He said. No. Were you touched? No, he was just following. How long? Since the diner, maybe longer, I don't know. Dominic nodded slowly. He looked at her untouched coffee. He looked at her face, up close, in daylight, in a stained coffee shop with a buzzing fluorescent light. He was not less terrifying. He was more. The gray eyes were the same gray. The small scar on his chin was the same small scar. There was a tiredness to him that she had not seen at the gala. The shadow under his eyes was a little deeper, as if he had not slept much in 3 days. I told you at the end of Sunday night, he said, that the Halstons of this city would not touch you. I meant it. I didn't think it was going to be tested this fast. It's not your fault. It is, a little. I made a public point of you. Some people are going to take that as an invitation to test it. That's horrifying. That's the world your father raised you in, Chloe. That's the world I live in. I'm not going to lie to you about it. She looked down at her hands. The photograph, she said quietly. Yes. Where did you get it? My sister. She kept everything from her lessons. Every piano book, every recital program, a few pictures your mother gave her over the years. When I told her, he hesitated. It was a hair-thin hesitation, and she caught it. When I told her who your mother's daughter was, she went through a box in her closet for half the night. She wanted me to send it. What's her name? Your sister? Sophia. Sophia Russo. Sophia now. Sophia Martelli. She married. She has a son. Does she know? She knows I came to the gala. She knows what I did. She knows what I offered you. He paused. She's angry with me about the offer, just so you know. Why? Because she thinks I should not have asked a woman whose mother she loved to marry me for reasons that were not love. Chloe felt something in her chest catch on itself. What did you tell her? She said. I told her, he said slowly, that I agreed with her, and that I had asked anyway, because I had run out of time to be picky about how I kept people safe. They sat in silence for a long moment. Run out of time, she repeated. Yes. Why? That's a longer conversation than a coffee shop. Then have it somewhere else with me. Dominic looked at her. She did not know afterward what her face did. But he looked at her, and something in the set of his shoulders softened, fractionally. All right, he said. I'd like that. He took her to a small restaurant in Little Italy that had no sign on the door. Lorenzo drove. The owner came out of the kitchen when they walked in, wiped her hands on her apron, kissed Dominic on both cheeks, and looked at Chloe with a long, thoughtful look that was not unkind. She sat them at a table in the back, brought a bottle of wine Dominic did not order, put a plate of bread down, and vanished. She's looked at me my whole life like I'm still 7 years old, Dominic said. That's not going to stop. It's nice, Chloe said. It is. He poured her a glass of wine. She did not drink it right away. Tell me, she said. Everything you thought was too long for the coffee shop. Dominic leaned back in his chair. He looked for a moment like a man choosing which rock to turn over first. "My father died in February," he said. "You may have read about it." "I didn't." "Good. The official story is he died of a heart attack. That is not exactly wrong. It is not, however, the entire story." "Okay, my family's business, the legitimate parts and the other parts, has been, for 40 years, an uneasy agreement between three families: the Russos, the Delacroix, the Santangelos. The details aren't important to you tonight. What is important is that the agreement only ever worked because my father was the one holding it together. He was the man everyone else was afraid of. Not me. Not yet. He died, and within 48 hours, 2 people tried to kill my sister's son." Chloe put down her bread. "He's 4, Dominic said. "His name is Luca. He is 4 years old and he likes dinosaurs, and in February, 2 men in a white sedan tried to grab him off a sidewalk in front of his preschool. The men did not succeed. I am the reason they did not succeed. I am also the reason those 2 men will not try anything like it again." "Dominic, I'm telling you this," he said, "because you asked, and because you deserve to know what you would be walking into if you walked into it." She did not speak. "The agreement my father held together," he went on, "is cracking. The Delacroix are cautious. They will wait. The Santangelos are not. They have a new head, a man named Marco Santangelo, who believes my father's death is an opportunity and who does not believe I have my father's reach. He is trying to find out whether he is right. The people he has been using to test this include, by the way, the Halstons. That was not random on Sunday. That was a message. You happened to be the woman standing where the message was delivered." "Means she on by Stin." Chloe stared at him. "Are you telling me," she said slowly, "that the reason Halston was on that balcony? I'm telling you he was there because I was. He was there to watch me. I wasn't supposed to arrive until late. I arrived early, and I saw what I saw, and what I did in response, I will be honest with you, was not only a kindness to you. You used me. No. You just said, I said what I did in response was not only a kindness. Listen to the words, Chloe. I could have walked past that balcony. I could have let Halston do what Halston was doing, and I could have handled Halston later, in private, the way men in my life usually handle Halstons. I did not. I stopped. Because I looked at your face and I saw a girl who looked exactly the way my sister looked, once, a long time ago, when we did not have anybody. And I stopped. He leaned forward. And then yes, he said. Having stopped, having made myself visible, I made a decision in the next 10 minutes that turned my protecting you into something public. I did that for 2 reasons. 1, because it sent Halston's people a message I wanted them to have. 2, because it made you, as of Sunday night, the most conspicuous woman in this city, which means you are also now the most dangerous woman in this city for anyone to hurt. Those 2 reasons are not separate. I did not choose one and also the other. I chose both. I am telling you that because if I don't tell you that, someone else will, eventually, and I would rather you hear it from me. Chloe looked down at her wine glass. So it was a transaction, she said. It was not only a transaction, Chloe. Please listen to what I am actually saying. Then what was it also? He looked at her for a long moment. It was also, he said quietly, the first time in 7 months that I had looked at another human being and felt like someone in the room was not trying to use me. And I wanted to give whatever that was a name. I wanted to sit down across from it. I wanted to know it. I am 34 years old, Chloe, and I have not been able to say that sentence about a single person I have met since February. And then I walked onto that balcony. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know what to say to that, she said. You don't have to say anything to that. I'm supposed to just decide. You're supposed to do whatever you want, Chloe. That was the whole point on Sunday. That is still the whole point. You want to walk out of this restaurant and never see me again and go back to your apartment and your diner and your friend. What's her name? Raina. And your friend Raina? You can do that. I will put 2 of my people on you from a distance for the next month because Halston's friend following you today tells me I have to, and after that month I will pull them back and you will never see me again. That is an option. Okay. You want to say yes to what I asked you on Sunday? That is an option too. It is the option I am hoping you take. I am not going to pretend I am not hoping, but it is not the option you are required to take for any other reason. And what do I do, Dominic, if I don't know yet? Then you don't know yet. That's not an answer. It's the only honest answer I have. You don't have to know tonight. You don't have to know this week. The offer does not expire. Everything expires. Not this. She looked up from her wine. The restaurant was very quiet. The owner had turned the music down discreetly and was pretending to polish glasses on the other side of the room. Lorenzo was sitting at the front table with an espresso he was not drinking, his eyes on the door. The candle on their table was burning low. "Dominic," Chloe said. "Yes." "I want to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Not a careful truth, the truth." "All right. If I had been ugly on Sunday, if I had been plain, if I had been the wrong age, if I had been anybody but who I was, would you still have stopped Halston?" He did not hesitate. "Yes." "Would you have kissed me?" "No." "Would you have asked me to marry you?" "No." "Then, Chloe, you asked me to be honest, not to be flattering. Yes, the way you looked up at me on that balcony mattered. Yes, the way you talked to me at the sitting room mattered. Yes, you are beautiful, and yes, you have your mother's eyes, and yes, all of it went into a decision I made in 30 minutes that I don't get to take back. I am not going to pretend I stopped Halston because of your eyes. I stopped Halston because he was wrong. But what came after? The dance, the kiss, the sitting room, the card. What came after was a decision about you. The specific you. Not a woman. A person. That person. The one I watched not cry at a fountain full of women laughing at her mother. I made a decision about her. Mom's, Chloe's eyes were burning. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I'm going to say something now. All right. I am not saying yes tonight. All right. I'm not saying no either. All right. I want to know you, Dominic, before I say anything. I want to eat dinner with you more than once. I want to meet your sister, if she'll meet me. I want to see how you talk to Lorenzo when you think I'm not listening. I want to know what you look like on a Sunday afternoon when nobody is trying to kill your nephew. I am 22 years old, and every decision anyone has ever made about me has been made by somebody else. And I'm not going to make the first one of my own after one dance and one kiss and one photograph of my mother. I'm not." She realized her hand was flat on the table, and that she was speaking more loudly than she had planned, and that Lorenzo at the front table had very politely not looked up. "Okay," she said, quieter. "That's what I wanted to say." Dominic Russo looked at her across the candle. Slowly, very slowly, he smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen on his face. It was not much of one. It didn't even quite reach both corners of his mouth, but it did something to the gray in his eyes that made her remember, suddenly and uselessly, the kiss in the ballroom. "Chloe Bennett," he said. "What?" "That's the best answer anybody has given me in 7 months." It wasn't a yes. No. And it wasn't a no. And it wasn't a thing you said because you were afraid of me, or because you were afraid of your father, or because you were afraid of being alone. That's what makes it the best answer. Don't do that. Do what? Don't look at me like you're proud of me. I'm not a dog. I know you're not a dog. Then stop it. I'll stop it. He did not stop it. He did it more quietly, was all. She could feel it across the table, the way you can feel a radiator in a cold room even if you aren't touching it. "All right," he said. "Then we eat. Then I drive you home. Then tomorrow, if you want, you come to my sister's house for lunch. She has been asking to meet you since Sunday night. She is going to be impossible about it in a way that will embarrass me, and I'm telling you in advance so that it doesn't scare you. And then, on the days after that, we have dinners. We have walks. We have—" He paused. "We have whatever you need, Chloe, to answer the question for yourself, and the Halstons and Sant'Angelo. I handle those. I want to know about them. You will." "I'm not going to be kept in the dark, Dominic. If I'm going to even consider this, I'm not going to be kept in the dark. I've been kept in the dark my whole life. I am done." He nodded slowly. "All right. You mean that?" "I mean that." "Say it again, so I know you heard me." You will not be kept in the dark. Chloe, you will not be kept in the dark. I swear it on my mother, and there is nothing else I swear on. She nodded. Her throat was very tight. Okay, she said. Okay. The owner came by then, as if she had been listening for a pause, and slid 2 plates of something fragrant and red onto the table without a word. Dominic thanked her in Italian. Chloe, whose Italian extended to about 4 words from a semester in college, thanked her in English. The owner patted Chloe's shoulder on the way back to the kitchen, a short, firm, grandmotherly pat. And Chloe almost lost it again. She did not lose it. She picked up her fork instead. Her hand had finally stopped shaking. Across the candle, Dominic Russo was watching her, and he was not smiling anymore, but his gray eyes were steady, and when he thought she wasn't looking, he let his shoulders come down. It had been a long 3 days for him too, she realized. He had been waiting for this phone call. He had been checking his phone, whether or not he would have admitted it, and he had not known if the call was ever going to come. He had been afraid too. Chloe Bennett did not say yes that night. She did not say no. She ate her dinner, and she let Dominic Russo drive her home in a long black car, and at her door, the plain metal door above the laundromat under the flickering hallway bulb, she turned to say goodnight, and he did not try to kiss her again. He just looked at her. Tomorrow, he said, 12:30. I'll send Lorenzo. He'll bring you to Sophia's. Okay. Sleep, Chloe. I don't know if I will. Try. He turned and walked down the stairs, and she watched him go, and she did not this time feel like anyone was leaving. She felt like a door had been left open, just left open, and whether or not she walked through it, whether or not she ran back through it to her old life, was going to be, for the first time in her life, her choice and her choice alone. She closed her apartment door. She leaned her back against it. On the kitchen table, the photograph of her mother was still where she had left it that morning, and beside it, the card with the number. And now, tucked under the card, a second card Dominic had slid to her at the end of dinner. An address in Brooklyn. A time. His own handwriting this time, plain, slightly slanted, the hand of someone who had learned to write in a school that cared about such things. 12:30, Sophia's. Come hungry. Chloe looked at it for a long time. Then very quietly, she set the tuxedo jacket on the back of the chair, took off her coat, and sat down on her narrow bed. And for the first time in 3 nights, she lay down and closed her eyes, without the feeling that someone was watching her through the wall. She was not safe. She understood that. Halston was out there. Santangelo was out there. Her father was out there. And her father, she suspected, was not going to take the silence of the last 3 days well for very much longer. Something was coming. Something large and loud and ugly. But tonight, in this apartment, she was alone, and she had eaten dinner with a man who had not lied to her, and her mother was on the kitchen table in a photograph she had not had yesterday, and she, Chloe Bennett, had said a thing about her own life that she had decided herself. She slept. She slept hard, and she did not dream. And when she woke up, the sun was coming through the cheap blinds in long, warm bars across the floor, and somewhere in her chest, under everything else, a small, careful, new thing had begun to grow, and she did not yet have a name for it, and she was not, for the moment, in any hurry to find one. She woke at 11. For a moment she lay in the warm bars of sunlight and thought she had dreamed the whole thing, and then she turned her head and saw the 2 cards and the photograph on her kitchen table, and the dreaming stopped. Chloe got up. She stood barefoot on the cold floorboards, and she looked at her closet, such as it was, a metal rod in an alcove, and she realized she did not own a single piece of clothing appropriate for having lunch with a woman named Sophia Russo Martelli. She owned jeans. She owned the wine-colored gala dress she was never going to put on her body again. She owned 3 sweaters in various stages of pilled. She owned 1 dress that had survived her college years, a dark green thing that had been her mother's once. She put on the green dress. She did her hair with shaking hands at the bathroom mirror, brushed it out, braided it back, unbraided it, left it down. Her face was pale. Her eyes were still tired. She put on a little mascara because it was the only makeup she had, and then she stood and looked at herself for a long moment, and she thought, "You look like a girl going to a lunch she cannot afford to fail." "Stop it," she told the mirror. The mirror did not stop. At 12:20, she went downstairs to wait. She did not want Lorenzo ringing her bell and the super seeing him. She stood on the sidewalk in her cheap black coat with the green dress underneath and the wind pushing her hair around, and at 12:30 on the dot, the long black car slid up to the curb. Lorenzo got out and opened the back door. "Miss Bennett." "Hi, good morning. Afternoon." "Afternoon, miss." She climbed in. The seats were leather and warm. Lorenzo pulled into traffic with the smooth, careful confidence of a man who had been driving other people's cars for 30 years. Chloe watched the city go by through tinted glass and tried, very hard, not to fidget. "Miss Bennett." "Yes." "Mrs. Martelli is going to ask you a great many questions," Lorenzo said, without taking his eyes off the road. "She is going to ask them quickly, and she is going to ask them about things you did not expect to be asked about. I'm telling you this because Mr. Russo would not, and he should have." Chloe blinked. "Why wouldn't he?" "Because he thinks his sister will be gentler with you than she will be." Is she not gentle?" "She is very gentle, miss. And she is also a woman who watched her brother carry her, at age 12, out of a house that was on fire. Those two things live in her at the same time." Chloe sat with that for a moment. "Thank you, Lorenzo." "Of course, miss." "Can I ask you something?" "You may." "How long have you worked for him?" Lorenzo's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, just for a second. "Since he was 11, he said. "I drove his mother, before I drove him." "Oh." "His mother was very kind to my wife when my wife was sick. I have not forgotten it. I will never forget it. I tell you this so that you understand, Miss Bennett, that when I call him Mr. Russo, it is not because I am afraid of him. It is because I love him, and he is the head of his family now, and this is how I show it." Chloe could not think of a single thing to say to that. Lorenzo, very mercifully, did not make her try. Sophia Martelli lived in Brooklyn, in a townhouse on a quiet block of brownstones with little iron railings and trees that had already started to lose their leaves. It did not look, from outside, like the house of anyone famous or dangerous. It looked like the house of a woman who had picked out her own curtains. A child's scooter was leaning against the stoop. Lorenzo walked Chloe to the door, rang the bell, and stepped back to the car without a word. The door opened, and Chloe, who had been bracing for someone sharp and suspicious and Russo-eyed, saw instead a woman maybe 6 or 7 years older than her, in jeans and an oversized cardigan, with flour on her cheek and a baby on her hip. "You're early," Sophia said. "Thank God. I'm losing my mind. Come in. I'm Sophia. This is the baby. We call him the baby because he doesn't have a real name yet. My husband and I can't agree." "Wait, he's yours? I thought Oh, you were told about Luca. Luca's at preschool. This is the second one. Surprise. To me, too." She laughed. "Come in, sweetheart. It's freezing." Chloe came in. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary and the kind of clean that is not actually clean, the kind of clean of a house where real people live and pick up their mess twice a day. Toys on the stairs, a coffee cup on a side table, a cat asleep on an armchair. In the back, through the open kitchen doorway, Chloe could see a table already set for 4, with water glasses and a good loaf of bread under a cloth. "Give me 5 seconds, Sophia said. "I have to put this one down. There's wine on the counter. Pour me some. Pour you some. Don't be polite, you'll hurt my feelings." Sophia disappeared upstairs. Chloe, bewildered, went into the kitchen. Dominic was already there. He was leaning against the counter in jeans and a gray sweater. Jeans, which she would not have believed he owned if she had not been looking straight at them, with his sleeves pushed up to the elbows. He was shelling something green into a bowl. The cat had followed Chloe into the kitchen and was now winding around his ankles like it owned him. He looked up when she walked in. For a second, 1 second, he just looked at her in the green dress and did not say anything. "Hi," Chloe said. "Hi." He went back to shelling. "She ambushed you on the porch, didn't she?" "A little. I tried to warn her." "Lorenzo warned me for you." "Good man." Chloe hovered in the doorway. She did not know what to do with her hands. "Can I help?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Come over here and sit down. Pour yourself wine. The stool by the window is the good one. The other ones wobble." She did what he said because it was easier than not. She sat on the good stool. She poured herself a small glass of wine she did not drink. The cat abandoned Dominic's ankles and came to rub against her shin, and she bent down and scratched behind its ear and tried to breathe. This is This is not what I was expecting, she said. I know. Your sister has a cat. Her name is Pasta. Your sister has a cat named Pasta. I know. Dominic. Yes. You shelled peas. They're snap peas. You're shelling snap peas. She's making me. She's making you. Chloe. He set the bowl down and looked at her. His gray eyes had that tiredness corner again, but under it there was something she had not seen on his face at any point in the last 2 days. Something small and, yes, a little embarrassed. She is my older sister. She made me shell peas when I was 7. She will make me shell peas when I am 70. Do not, for the love of... He paused, caught himself, reset. Do not please tell anyone you saw this. Chloe, before she could stop herself, laughed. It came out of her, and it surprised her, because she had not laughed, not really laughed, since Sunday morning at the latest, and maybe for longer. It was a real laugh, a small one. Dominic looked up at the sound of it, and something happened to his face, a small softening at the mouth, that she filed away without meaning to, in a place she was going to think about later. I won't tell anyone, she said. Thank you. Your secret is safe. You say that now. Wait until I have to cut the parsley. Sophia came back down the stairs without the baby. She had washed the flour off her cheek. She poured herself the wine Chloe had not poured her, took a long sip, and said without preamble, Chloe, before we sit down, I need to say 3 things to you, and I need you to let me say them without interrupting, because if you interrupt me, I will lose my place. Is that all right? Yes. Good. Number 1, your mother saved my life. Chloe went still. Dominic, at the counter, went still. I was 8, Sophia said. I don't know what I was. I was a very angry child who had been through a very bad year, and my mother put me in piano lessons because she did not know what else to do with me. And your mother sat me at a piano and did not make me talk for 6 weeks. She just sat me at the piano and played. And at the end of 6 weeks, I played a scale. And she cried. And I had not seen anybody be proud of me in I don't know how long. So when I say saved my life, I am not being dramatic. I want to tell you that because you may have heard it a great deal in your life, that your mother was a problem or a scandal or a waitress or whatever nonsense people say, and I want you to know that in this house, in my house, your mother is a saint and you are her daughter, and you do not need to earn anything from me. You walked in the door with it. Chloe's eyes had filled and she did not try to hide it. Okay, she said. Okay. Number 2, Sophia said. Her voice was steady, but her own eyes were bright. My brother is a good man. He is also a man who, at this particular point in his life, is making decisions under more pressure than is really fair to him. And some of those decisions are decisions that affect you. I want you to know I am watching him. I love him, but I'm watching him. If he does anything stupid with you, and I will be the judge of what is stupid, I will hear about it, and I will drag him by the ear to wherever you are, and he will apologize, all right? Chloe could not help it. She smiled. All right, she said. Dominic in the corner quietly said, Sophia, hush, Dom. Number 3, I don't know if you are going to say yes to him. I don't know if you should. I am not going to tell you to. I also am not going to tell you not to. But whatever you decide, Chloe, I want you to know that the decision is yours to make, and that if you say no, you still have a place at this table anytime you want it. Your mother taught my brother's sister to play piano, and that is not a favor that gets paid back by my family ever. So, that's 3 things. Now we eat. Chloe did not even get to answer. Sophia turned and began ladling pasta out of a pot Chloe had not noticed was on the stove. Chloe looked at Dominic. Dominic, his hand stilled on the counter, was looking at his sister with an expression Chloe could not entirely read. There was love in it, and there was something else. Something tired and grateful, and just a little broken, as if he had been carrying something for a long time and someone else had, without asking, taken one corner of it off his shoulders. He looked up and met Chloe's eyes, and he did not smile, and he did not wink, and he did not do any of the things a man might do to lighten that look on his face. He just held it. And Chloe, who had been told 3 things she had not expected to hear out loud from anyone ever, held it back. They ate at Sophia's kitchen table, and later at a scratched wooden living room table, and later on cushions on the floor in front of a fireplace, because Sophia's husband came home, a tall, soft-spoken man named Paolo, who ran, Chloe eventually gathered, a construction business that was one of the few pieces of the Russo empire that had no shadow side at all. Paolo shook Chloe's hand with both of his. He called his wife Bella and kissed the top of her head while she was still fussing over bowls. He did not ask Chloe anything invasive. He asked her about her mother's piano playing and about the diner and about whether she liked butter on her bread. And Chloe understood slowly that he was a man who had been told be easy on her and was doing it well. Luca came home at 3 from preschool. A small compact storm of a 4-year-old with a dinosaur stuffy and a scraped knee, and he ran into the house, took one look at Chloe sitting on the floor in front of his fireplace, and demanded that she admire the dinosaur. Chloe admired the dinosaur. Luca decided she was acceptable. He sat down beside her and began with great concentration to explain why his dinosaur was a carnivore, which was a very important word, and which he pronounced with great care and a slight lisp. Chloe, laughing quietly, looked up at Dominic. Dominic was sitting on the couch behind her. He was watching his nephew. He was watching the small, dark-haired boy in superhero pajamas explaining the word carnivore to a woman he had just met, and something in his face, for 1 second, was so raw that Chloe had to look away. This is why, she thought. This is why he came home early from somewhere to be in that ballroom on Sunday. This is why he has not been sleeping. This is why he is 34 and already tired. Because there is a little boy in superhero pajamas who knows the word carnivore, and in February, 2 men in a white sedan tried to put him in a car. And Dominic Russo lives in a world where this can be true. And he is trying, with everything he has, to build a world in which it cannot. She understood something in that moment that she had not understood the night before at dinner. He had not been asking her to marry into a fairy tale. He had been asking her to help him build a wall. She stayed at Sophia's until past dark. Sophia fed her twice. Paolo refilled her wine glass without asking, and then, when he realized she wasn't really drinking it, switched her quietly to water. Luca fell asleep on her lap during a book about a bear who could not find his hat, and Chloe did not move for almost an hour, because the weight of a sleeping 4-year-old on her legs was doing something to her chest that she did not have a word for, and she did not want it to stop. At 7, Sophia came in and carefully lifted the boy off her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "He doesn't do that with everybody." I know you didn't. That's the point." Around 8, Dominic said low, "I should get you home." Chloe nodded. She did not want to go. She also knew she had to. Sophia hugged her at the door. It was a real hug. Not an air kiss, not a society hug, a real hard 2-armed hug from a woman with flowers still a little bit on her sweater. "Come back," Sophia said into her ear. "Whenever you want, whatever you decide. You understand me? Whenever." "Okay. Good girl." In the car, Chloe sat in the back with Dominic for the first time. Lorenzo drove, the partition was up, the city slid by in long, smeared lights. Neither of them spoke for a long time. "She's amazing," Chloe said finally. "She is. She's the reason you do any of this. She and Luca, and the baby, and Paolo, and about 14 other people I can name." "Dominic?" "Yes." "Thank you for today?" He turned his head. The streetlight hit his face in passing and lit for a moment the small scar on his chin. "You're welcome. I mean it. That was more than I thought it was going to be." "I know. Don't." She stopped, started again. "Don't say anything clever to that, all right? Don't make it a bit. All right. Just let me say thank you." "All right." They rode in silence for a few more blocks. "Dominic." "Yes." "I want to ask you a question." "All right." "About your father." Something in the car changed, the temperature of it. He did not move, did not tense visibly, but Chloe felt the change anyway, the way you feel a draft from a cracked window. "Ask, what kind of man was he?" Dominic was quiet for a long moment. "He was a man," he said finally, "who loved his children. He was also a man who did a great many things in his life that I am still paying for, and that Sophia is still paying for, and that Luca is going to pay for, whether we protect him or not. He loved us. He taught us. He also, he paused. He also hurt a lot of people, Chloe. And some of them were people I do not think deserved it. I'm not going to sit in this car and lie to you about my father. I loved him, and I miss him, and I am angry at him every single day. And those are three things that are all true at once. Does that answer your question? Yes? Why are you asking? Because I want to know what kind of man you are going to be, Chloe said quietly, and I think that's something you're still deciding. Dominic looked at her. Yes, he said, it is. They turned onto her block. Chloe? Yes. I want to ask you something now. Okay. Not the big one. A smaller one. Okay. Would you let me take you to dinner again tomorrow night? Just us, not Sophia's house, not a family thing, just dinner. Like a date. Like a date. She looked down at her hands. Yes, she said. Yeah? Yeah. All right. The car pulled up to her building. Lorenzo did not get out right away, which was, Chloe realized, a courtesy. Dominic did not touch her. He looked at her for a second, and his hand was on the seat between them, open, and she almost put hers on top of it. And then she didn't. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow. 8? 8. She opened the door herself. Lorenzo was out of the car a second later regardless, and walked her to her building door and waited until her key turned in the lock. Good night, miss. Good night, Lorenzo. Upstairs, she took off the green dress and hung it on her closet rod. She stood in the middle of the apartment for a long moment. She looked at the photograph of her mother on the kitchen table. She thought about what Sophia had said. Your mother saved my life. And she pressed her hand to her mouth and let herself, for the second time in 3 days, cry, properly, all the way through. She slept that night the way people who have not slept for years sleep, deeply, blackly, without moving. And she woke the next morning to her phone ringing at 7. It was her father. Chloe stared at the screen. Arthur. In capital letters, because she had put him in her phone that way at 16, when she had first believed, stupidly, that if she made him important enough in the contact list, he would become important enough in her life. She almost did not answer it. She answered it. Hello? Chloe. Father. Do not call me father. You lost that privilege. Chloe sat down on the edge of her bed. Her hand was steady. It was, she noticed, not shaking at all. What do you want, Arthur? What do I want? Chloe, what the hell is wrong with you? Do you have any idea what you have done? What I have done? You walked into my house wearing one of my wife's dresses, and you got on the arm of Dominic Russo in front of half the people I do business with, half of them, Chloe. Senators, judges, men who... Do you have any idea what that looks like? Do you have any idea what that does? I have some idea. Chloe, listen to me. I don't know what he has told you, but that man is not... He is not a man you can handle. He is not a man you play games with. This is over. Do you understand? Whatever this is, you're going to end it today, and you are going to come to my office at noon, and we are going to sit down together, and we are going to figure out how to fix what you have done. No. There was a silence on the line. I'm sorry, her father said. I said no, I'm not coming to your office. Chloe, are you out of your mind? I don't think so. Chloe, listen to me very carefully. That man has used you. Do you understand? He used you to make a point to people you do not understand the first thing about. He is not interested in you. He never was. He saw a weak point of mine walking around in a bad dress, and he used it. And now he is going to discard you, and I am going to be stuck cleaning up the damage. You have always been clumsy, Chloe, like your mother. You do not think things through, I am telling you. For your own good, Arthur. Don't interrupt me. Arthur, I am going to interrupt you because you're about to say something about my mother that you will not be able to take back, and I would like to give you a chance to not say it. There was another silence on the line. It was a different silence this time. It was the silence of a man recalibrating. Chloe, her father said more quietly. Sweetheart, don't. Sweetheart, I know you are angry with me. You have always been angry with me. I have not always been the best father. I know that. But I need you to trust me right now. I need you to come in. I need you to sit down. We can talk about your future. We can talk about what you need. Money, if you need money. An apartment, if you need one. I can fix this for you, Chloe, but only if you come in now. And there it was. All her life, Chloe Bennett had waited for her father to call her sweetheart. She had waited for him to ask what she needed. She had waited for him to offer her an apartment, for God's sake. She had fallen asleep in her studio above the laundromat more nights than she could count, imagining her father, just once, saying, "I know you are struggling, let me help." And here he was. And he was only saying it because Dominic Russo had danced with her at a party. It should have hurt more than it did. It hurt. But under the hurt was something else, something old and colder, and Chloe did not flinch away from it because she realized she had been carrying it too for a very long time. She had just never let it speak. "Arthur?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Why didn't you send the money?" A beat of silence. "I'm sorry?" "For Mom, for the hospital, the better one, in Westchester. The doctor told you and Mom told me he told you, and you said you would send it. You didn't send it. She died in a hospital in the Bronx with water stains on the ceiling. Why didn't you send the money?" "Chloe, I want you to answer the question, Arthur, not to hurt you. I am past trying to hurt you. I just want you to answer the question. Once. In your life." "Chloe, that was a long time ago. 7 years. 7 years ago, I was in the middle of negotiations with, you do not understand how complicated it was. So you had the money." "Chloe, you had the money, Arthur." Another silence. "Yes. Thank you." "Chloe, I am hanging up now." "Don't you dare hang up on me." "Arthur, I am hanging up, and I am not coming to your office. And I am not ending anything you would like me to end. I am 22 years old, and my mother is dead, and you are going to have to find another way to fix whatever you broke. Chloe, if you do not come into this office by noon today, I swear to you, there are going to be consequences. Consequences from who, Arthur?" Silence. "Consequences from who?" "Chloe, you do not want to find out. Goodbye, Arthur." She hung up. She sat very still for a long moment on the edge of her bed. Then, with hands that were, miraculously, astonishingly, still not shaking, she dialed the other number. The one on the card. The one she had now called twice in 48 hours. "Russo." "It's me." "Chloe." His voice changed. "What's wrong?" "My father just called me. And he told me to come to his office at noon. He offered me money. He threatened me. He tried to tell me you were using me." "Chloe?" "I told him no." There was a breath on the other end of the line. "I'm proud of you," Dominic said. "Don't." "All right. I'm not proud of you. I'm impressed by you." "That's not better." "Chloe." "What?" He said consequences. He did. "Then I need you to do one thing for me today. I need you to come to my office. I am not going to drag you there. I am asking. I need to put 2 people on you between now and dinner because I do not want to find out later what your father meant by consequences." Chloe closed her eyes. "Okay. Lorenzo's already downstairs." "Of course he is." "Chloe." "Yes. I'll see you in 20 minutes. She got dressed in jeans and her one thick sweater and the cheap black coat. She put the 2 cards and the photograph in her bag. She did not know, when she locked her apartment door, whether she would be coming back that night, or the next night, or in a month. She did not know anything. And the strange thing, the thing that surprised her as she went down the stairs and out into the cold, was that she was not afraid. Lorenzo was parked in the loading zone. He did not speak when she got in. He made eye contact in the rearview mirror, a long, steady eye contact that was almost fatherly. And then he pulled out into the morning traffic and drove her to a building on Park Avenue she had only ever walked past. Dominic's office was on the 32nd floor. There was no sign on the door. There was a reception desk made of a single slab of dark wood, and a woman behind it who looked like she had been doing this job for 30 years, and a long hallway of glass offices where men in suits turned one by one to look at Chloe as she walked past. Dominic met her in the doorway of a corner office. He did not hug her. He did not touch her. He looked at her face, really looked, and whatever he saw in it made his jaw tighten for 1 second. "Come in," he said. She came in. He shut the door. Tell me, he said. She told him. Everything. The call, word for word, as closely as she could remember it. The sweetheart. The apartment. The money he had never before offered her. The silence after her question about the hospital. The word consequences. Dominic listened without interrupting. He was standing at his window, his back to the city, his arms crossed. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Chloe. Yes. I need to tell you something, and I need you to sit down. She sat down. He came around the desk. He did not sit across from her. He sat in the chair beside her, turned it to face her, and leaned his elbows on his knees. 3 weeks ago, he said, one of my people flagged a piece of information I had not asked for because he thought it might be connected to some business I had with the Santangelos. I made him dig. The digging went in a direction I had not expected it to go. I now have, on my desk, something that I would have brought to you at dinner tonight, in your own time, with my sister in the room, because I thought you might want another woman there. After what your father just said to you on the phone, I don't think I get to wait. What is it? It's about your mother. Chloe went cold. What about her? Her death, Chloe. It was not... He stopped. He rubbed a hand over his face. For the first time, Chloe saw Dominic Russo struggle to pick his next sentence. It was not what you were told it was. Dominic, what are you saying to me? I am saying that your mother was not just a woman who did not get moved to a better hospital in time. I am saying there were complications with her care. There were complications that, based on what my person found, were not accidental. Chloe could not speak. I am saying, Dominic said quietly, that I believe your mother was killed, Chloe. And I am saying I do not yet have enough to tell you by whom, but I have enough to tell you that it was done. And I have enough to tell you that your father, at minimum, knew. The room went very quiet. Chloe's hand was on the armrest of the chair. She was looking at her hand. She was watching her knuckles go white. She was aware, distantly, that her heart was beating hard, and she was aware, just as distantly, that she was not crying. She was not crying. Something in her was too large to cry. Who? She said. I don't know yet. Dominic. I don't know yet, Chloe. I would not lie to you. I don't know. But you have a guess. I have a guess. Tell me the guess, not yet? Dominic. Chloe. He reached across, not grabbing her hand, just laying his palm up on the armrest beside hers, an offer. If I tell you the guess, and I am wrong, you will carry that name for the rest of your life. I will not do that to you on a guess. I will tell you when I know. I will not wait a day longer than I have to, and I will not keep you in the dark. But I will not name someone before I am certain. Do you understand? She put her hand in his. She did not answer the question. She put her hand in his, and her fingers were cold, and his were warm, and he closed his hand around hers carefully, as if he were afraid of breaking something. Okay, she said. Her voice was very steady, which was strange. Okay. How long? To know for certain, maybe a week, maybe less. All right. Chloe, I want to say something. All right. She looked up at him. Her eyes were dry. She did not know what she looked like in that moment, but whatever it was, it made the gray of his eyes shift. When you know, she said, I want to be there. When you go and you do whatever it is you're going to do about it, I want to be there. I am not a child, Dominic. I am not going to sit in Sophia's kitchen with a glass of wine while the men handle it. She was my mother, and Arthur... Her voice cracked for the first time. She got it back. Arthur knew. I am going to be in the room when the answer comes. Tell me now that I will be in the room when the answer comes. Dominic Russo did not look away from her. You will be in the room, he said. When the answer comes, you will be in the room. I swear it on my mother. Good. Chloe. Yes. There is one more thing. Okay. I do not want to ask you this today, after what you have just heard. I'm going to anyway, because if I don't ask you today, you are going to think I waited on purpose. And I am too tired, Chloe, to do things on purpose anymore when it comes to you. Ask. The answer you wouldn't give me on Sunday night. I still want it. She looked at him. The office was quiet. Far below, the city hummed. Somewhere down the long glass hallway, a phone rang and stopped. A plane drew a slow white line across the blue outside the window. Her hand was in his, and her mother was dead, and had been killed, and her father had known, and she did not, after this morning, have a father anymore. And none of that was going to change whether she said what she was about to say or didn't. So it was not, in the end, a hard question. She had thought it would be hard. She had thought about it for 4 days. She had been terrified of it. And now, sitting in a corner office on Park Avenue with her hand in the hand of the most dangerous man in the city, with the worst thing she had ever been told about her life still sitting in the room between them like a third person, it was unexpectedly not hard at all. Yes, Dominic. He closed his eyes for a second, just a second, a brief, private thing. Then he opened them, and he looked at her, and there was nothing performed about his face at all. Yes? Yes? Chloe, you understand what you're saying. I do. Not because of this, not because of the money, not because you are afraid of your father, not because of what I just told you. Dominic, stop. He stopped. I'm saying yes, Chloe said, because I sat on your sister's floor yesterday and your nephew fell asleep on my legs. I am saying yes because your sister told me my mother saved her life, and because I believe her. I am saying yes because my father tried to buy me this morning with an apartment, and you have not tried to buy me at all. I am saying yes because when I was scared in a coffee shop you came in 7 minutes, and because last night you shelled snap peas in your sister's kitchen in jeans. I am saying yes because you told me I could say no. That is why I am saying yes. Not any other reason. All of those reasons. Do you understand me? Yes. Good. Chloe, I am not finished. One condition. Tell me. You keep your promise. About my mother. I am in the room. I don't care who it ends up being. I don't care how much you don't want me there. I am in the room. If you break that promise, Dominic Russo, I swear to God I will walk out of whatever life we have built, and I will not come back. I will not break that promise. Say it again. I will not break that promise. Okay. She looked down at their hands. She looked up again. And Dominic Russo, who had not touched her since her door last night, did not move. He sat in his chair with her hand in his, and he looked at her like a man who had just been given, without asking, one more reason to stay upright. Outside the window, the plane drew the rest of its white line and disappeared into the blue. They were married 11 days later. There was no cathedral. There was no white dress. There was not even, thank every quiet thing in the world, a guest list of the people who had laughed at Chloe's mother over champagne. It was a Thursday afternoon in the library of a judge Dominic had known since he was 12, a man named Aldo Bianchi, who had long ago retired from the bench and who now kept bees in a garden out in Westchester. The ceremony lasted 9 minutes. Sophia cried through all of them. Paolo held the baby. Luca, in a little navy suit, had been promised a slice of chocolate cake the size of his own head. If he stood still, and he stood still with the terrified concentration of a 4-year-old on the verge of becoming very rich. Raina stood at Chloe's shoulder in a dress she had bought that morning and kept in her hand, the entire 9 minutes, a crumpled tissue she never actually used. Chloe wore a dress Sophia had bought for her, cream, simple, knee-length, with sleeves to the elbow. It was not a wedding dress. It was a dress a woman wore when she was taking her life back. Sophia had said that out loud, in the dressing room, and Chloe had not argued, because it was true. Dominic wore a dark suit. He did not say anything clever at the altar. He said his words quietly, and when he slid the ring onto her finger, his hand was steadier than hers. There was no kiss for the room. There were no cameras. There was a small private kiss at the judge's door after everyone else had gone into the garden, that Chloe would remember in full color on nights she could not sleep. And then it was done. And she was Chloe Russo on paper, and for the first time in her life she had a name that no one in the world was whispering about behind her back because a thing her father had done. They did not go on a honeymoon. They did not have the time. By Sunday, 6 days later, the walls were already beginning to move. Marco Santangelo had sent 3 messages in 3 different ways, and they were all the same message, which was, "We know what you just did, and we do not accept it, and we are coming." The first message had been a dinner invitation Dominic had declined. The second had been a car parked outside Sophia's house at night that had not moved for 45 minutes until Lorenzo had walked out of the house in his coat and the car had driven away. The third had been a letter, on thick cream paper exactly like the card Dominic had given Chloe in the sitting room, that had been slipped under the door of the diner on Monday morning. The letter was addressed to Mrs. Russo. Dolly had found it. Dolly had, to her considerable credit, not touched it. She had called Chloe. Chloe had called Dominic. Dominic had sent a man Chloe had not yet met named Remy. Thin, quiet, faintly amused, who had come and put on gloves and picked the envelope up and put it in a bag, and had then, very politely, bought Dolly a cup of coffee and sat with her at the counter for 20 minutes. "I don't know what he said to her," Chloe would tell Dominic later, "but she has not stopped calling me sweetheart. Remy has that effect on people," Dominic had said. "He can't help it. It's the face." The letter itself had said 5 words. "The wedding will not take." That was Tuesday. By Wednesday, Dominic had moved her out of the apartment above the laundromat. She did not fight it. She had already understood, the morning after she said yes to him in his office, that the apartment was not going to be hers anymore. Not because he was making her leave it, but because standing there alone was no longer safe, and she was not the only person who would pay if she pretended otherwise. She packed in 1 suitcase. She left the books in the milk crate bookshelf. She left the dishes in the cabinet. She took the framed picture of her mother and the sundress and jersey photograph Dominic had sent her, and her mother's green dress, and a gray sweater her grandmother had knitted in 1979. She left everything else for whichever girl took the apartment after her. She did not look back when she closed the door. Dominic's apartment, their apartment now, which she could not yet say out loud without her voice going strange, was on the top 2 floors of a building on the Upper East Side. It had a view of the park. It had 2 kitchens, which Chloe did not understand, and would not understand for weeks. It had books, thousands of them. The entire wall of the long living room was books, hardcovers mostly, some of them clearly very old. Chloe had walked in that first afternoon, set down her suitcase, looked at the books and said, "Dominic." "Yes." "Did you read all of these?" Most. "I haven't finished the Russian ones. My father collected Russian novels, and I only speak enough Russian to argue with waiters in Brighton Beach. I keep meaning to." "Who does your laundry?" He had paused, genuinely puzzled. "What? You just told me you read Tolstoy. I am asking, who does your laundry?" He had looked at her, and she had seen a slow, helpless smile spread across his mouth, the kind that told her the question had caught him off balance. "A woman named Inez," he had said, "who has done it since I was 18 and who terrifies me." "Good." "Good?" "It's good," Chloe had said, "that there is one more woman in your life who terrifies you. I was worried you were running low." He had laughed then, out loud, a real, surprised laugh. And Chloe had realized, standing in the entryway of an apartment worth more than the entire block she had grown up on, that she was not afraid. She was not afraid of him. She was not afraid of this room. She was not for a moment afraid of anything. It did not last. Of course it did not last. The first 3 nights, she did not sleep well. She had never slept in a bed that big. She had never slept in a room that quiet. Dominic, who had given her the master bedroom on the top floor without even asking, slept on the other side of the apartment on the floor below in what had been his father's study. On what Sophia had told her on the phone was, "The worst couch in the world, Chloe. I promise you, it was bought to punish people." Chloe had tried, 3 separate mornings, to tell him that he did not have to do that. And 3 separate mornings he had said calmly, "We said we would take the time you needed. We are taking it." And she had not argued, because she had not known, quite yet, what she wanted instead. But on the 4th night, the night of the day the letter came to the diner, she had stood at the top of the long staircase in her pajamas and looked down into the dim apartment below. And she had thought, "I do not want to be alone in this bed tonight." She had gone down. He had been awake, reading in a wingback chair by the window, with the park all lit up in the black outside. He had looked up when she came into the doorway. He had not said anything. He had not even gotten up at first. He had just looked at her and waited. "I can't sleep," she had said. "Come here." She had gone to him. She had sat on the floor beside his chair, her back against the leg of it, and he had rested his hand on the top of her head, not doing anything with it, not petting, just there. His hand had been very warm. Her shoulders had come down inch by inch for 10 minutes. Dominic? Yes. I don't want to sleep upstairs tonight. Not because of that, just I don't want to be up there by myself. All right, there's a guest room on this floor. You can take it. I'll sleep in the study. That's fine. She had slept 3 hours on a guest bed on the same floor as him, and it had been the first 3 real hours she had slept in 4 nights, and the next morning, over coffee, neither of them had mentioned it. He did not push. Not once. Not a hand, not a look, not even a half suggestion. Chloe, who had walked into his apartment braced for something she would not have known how to ask him not to do, slowly realized that the thing she had been braced for was not going to happen unless she asked for it to. And that realization did something to her that no ballroom kiss had ever done. It loosened something. It made her, for small minutes at a time, forget to be afraid of her own life, which was good because her own life, outside the walls of that apartment, was doing everything it could to remind her. On Monday morning, the phone calls started. Her father had gone quiet for exactly 4 days after she had hung up on him. Chloe had begun to think, naively, that maybe he was going to stay quiet, that maybe, with Dominic Russo's name now legally attached to hers, Arthur Bennett had decided it was cheaper to walk away. She had been wrong. The first call came at 9 in the morning from a number she did not know. She did not answer. The voicemail was her father, smooth and controlled and far too warm, saying, "Chloe, sweetheart, we need to talk. I want to apologize. I said some things I didn't mean. Please call me back." The second call came at 10:30, the third at noon. By the end of the day, there were 11 voicemails, each of them warmer than the last, each of them more concerned for her, each of them with a small, soft mention, late in the message, of the unwise decision you have made, or this young man you've gotten yourself tangled up with, or people who, I am sure, have not told you everything they are. Chloe played the 11th one out loud for Dominic in the living room that night, on speakerphone, and she did not cry during it, and she did not flinch during it, and when it ended, she looked up at him and said, "Do you hear it?" "Yes." "He is frightened." "Yes." "Why is my father frightened, Dominic? Of what?" Dominic had been quiet for a long moment. He had been standing by the bookcase with a glass of water in his hand. He had put the glass down. "Come here," he had said. She had come. He had turned her toward him, his hands on her upper arms, and he had looked her in the eye, and he had said very carefully, "Chloe, I promised you in my office that when I knew, I would tell you. I am going to keep that promise. I need another 36 hours. 2 more things have to come in. If I tell you now, I will tell you wrong, and I will tell you incomplete. Give me 36 hours. She had looked at him. "Is my father frightened?" she had said. "Because he killed her?" Dominic's hands had tightened for 1 second on her arms. "I am not going to answer that yet," he had said, "because I am not going to answer it until I am sure. 36 hours. Okay? Chloe. Okay, Dominic, I said okay. I meant it. Thank you. I'm going to go upstairs for a minute." All right. She had gone up. She had sat on the edge of the enormous bed she still was not sleeping in the room with the view of the park, and she had not cried. She had pressed her hands flat together and pressed her lips against her knuckles, and she had made a sound that was not a sob and not a word, a kind of long, low, animal noise that was neither grief nor rage, and that was also both. And then she had gotten up and washed her face and gone back downstairs. Dominic had made her pasta. He had actually made it. Not a housekeeper, not Inez, who on reflection did not cook. He had stood in one of the 2 kitchens in his jeans and his rolled-up shirt sleeves, and he had made her pasta with butter and sage, because Sophia had mentioned to him on the phone, apparently, that their mother had made it for both of them when they could not eat anything else. He had set it down in front of her at the kitchen counter. "Dom." "Eat." "I don't think I can." "I know. Eat anyway. 2 bites. 3. Then leave the rest." "But 2." She had eaten 4. And when she had set her fork down and looked at him and said quietly, "I don't want to be alone upstairs tonight," he had not made a joke, and he had not made a move, and he had not asked her what she meant. He had said, "Take the guest room on my floor again. I'll be across the hall. You say my name, and I'm there in 10 seconds. "Okay. Okay. She had slept the first full 8 hours she had slept in a week, and when she had woken up at 7, the smell of coffee had been drifting up the stairs, and Dominic, in his jeans with his hair damp from the shower, reading the newspaper at the kitchen counter, had looked up and said, "Good morning," the way her father had never said it to her once in her life. The 36 hours ran out on Wednesday night at 8:30. They were in the library. Chloe had been on the couch with a book about the history of the Hudson River she had picked up off one of the low shelves, not reading it, her fingers tracing the edge of the page. Dominic had been in the wingback chair. The curtains had been drawn. Remy, the thin, quiet man with the amused face, had been standing by the window, and Lorenzo had been at the door. And Sophia, who had come over an hour earlier without being asked, as if she had known, had been sitting on the ottoman at Chloe's feet. It had been, Chloe realized later, as much of a family as she had ever been in a room with. Dominic had set down the folder on the low table in the middle of the room. He had not opened it yet. "Chloe," he had said. "Yes. I want you to understand what is in this folder before I open it." "Okay, 2 things. The first is the name of the man who had your mother killed. I know it. I am certain. I will show you what I know and how I know it. The second is a list of everything your father did to help him before and after. That is also in here. It is longer than I would like it to be." Chloe had sat very still. "Before I open it," Dominic had said, "I want to tell you one more thing." "What?" "Whatever you want to do with what is in this folder, we do, together. You do not do it alone. I do not do it without you. Sophia is here because she wanted to be, and because she thinks you should have one more person in the room who is not a man with an office. Remy is here because if we decide to do anything with what is in this folder tonight, he starts moving tonight, and he wanted to hear the decision from you. Do you understand?" "Yes. All right." He had looked at her for one long second. "Open it, or tell me to, and I will." She had looked at the folder. She had looked at Sophia, whose face had been calm and a little wet around the eyes, and who had said nothing, and just nodded. She had reached across the table and she had opened the folder herself. The name at the top of the first page was Vincent Halston. Chloe had stared at it for a long moment. "Halston," she had said. "Yes, the father of the one on the balcony." "Yes." "Why?" "Because," Dominic had said slowly and carefully, 7 years ago, your mother had done something that your father did not know she had done, and that Vincent Halston did not want her to have done, and that your father, when he found out, did not try hard enough to stop from getting her killed. Your mother, Chloe, had gone to the FBI. The room had gone completely still. What? 6 months before she died. She had been noticing things for years. Men your father was bringing around the house when you were small. Conversations she was not supposed to hear. Your father had, I think, underestimated your mother very badly for a very long time, and she had gone to a man at the FBI field office downtown who a cousin of hers had put her in touch with, and she had begun to talk to him. Not about your father. She had not wanted to hurt your father. She had wanted to tell the man what she knew about a shipping contract a friend of your father's had that she was certain was being used for something that was not shipping. That friend of your father's was Vincent Halston. Oh God. When she got sick, Dominic had continued, his voice level. Someone, I do not yet have a name for the specific person, but I have the hospital, and I have the nurse, and I have a payment that was made. Someone changed the dosage of one of her medications over 4 nights. The official story was that she went into respiratory distress because of her existing condition. I have the chart. I have the pharmacy record. I have the second chart, the one that was altered to match the first. It is all here. Chloe's hand was on the page. She could not feel her fingers. And my father. Your father was told, 3 days before your mother died, that there was a problem. He was told by Vincent Halston directly. He was told that Elena had become a liability. He was told that Elena was going to be handled. Your father, Dominic had paused. Your father did not tell Vincent Halston not to. He did not move her to another hospital. He did not move her to any other hospital. He was given the chance, Chloe. For 72 hours, he was given the chance. And he spent those 72 hours having lunch with 3 senators and attending 2 cocktail parties. That is what the second section of the folder is. It is his schedule for those 3 days. Dummisent. Chloe had closed the folder. She had closed it very carefully with both hands and laid them flat on top of it. Sophia, she had said. Yes, baby. Did you know? When I met you on Saturday. Did you know this? No, Sophia had said. I swear to you on my son's head, I did not. Dom did not tell me until this afternoon. I would have told you before you came to my house. I would have found a way. Okay? I would have. I promise. I believe you. Okay. Dominic. Yes. What happens to Vincent Halston? Dominic had looked at her. The room had been very quiet. Remy at the window had not moved. Lorenzo at the door had not moved. Sophia on the ottoman had been holding her own hands. What do you want to happen, Dominic had said, to Vincent Halston? And this was the moment. Chloe would think about this moment later and later and later, still for the rest of her life. This was the moment the room tipped, because she had two answers. She knew she had two answers. There was the answer that was the woman who had been the bastard of the Bennett family for 22 years, who had been mocked at a champagne fountain, who had been grabbed on a balcony, whose mother had died in a cracked vinyl hospital bed because a man named Vincent Halston had wanted her dead, and a man named Arthur Bennett had not cared enough to send her to Westchester. That woman had an answer, and it was an answer that was the color of blood. And then there was the other answer. Chloe sat on the couch with her hands on the folder, and she looked at Dominic Russo, and she understood, the way you understand something in your body before your mind catches up, that the answer she chose in the next 10 seconds was going to set the shape of who she became for the rest of her life. Her mother had not been a woman of vengeance. Her mother had sat 8-year-old Sophia at a piano and not made her talk for 6 weeks. Her mother had played the hymns in the church basement for free for 20 years. Her mother had, at 43 years old, walked into an FBI field office not to punish anybody, but because she had believed, stupidly, beautifully, that you did not let bad men do bad things when you knew about it. Her mother had been a better person than Chloe Bennett was ever going to be. That was not the point. The point was that if Chloe ended Vincent Halston with a bullet, her mother, whoever her mother had been, wherever her mother had gone when she died on that bed, would not have been able to look at her daughter again. Chloe did not want to become a woman her mother could not look at, but she did not want to be a woman Vincent Halston survived either. Dominic, she said. Yes, I don't want him killed. Remy at the window did not react. Lorenzo at the door did not react. Sophia made a small, soft, relieved sound at the foot of the couch that she tried to hide and didn't quite. Dominic slowly exhaled. All right, he said. I want him destroyed. All right. Every piece of his business, every contract, every account, every partner, every man who took his money, and every man who knows what he did to my mother and did not say. I want all of it. I want him in an apartment at the end of it, smaller than the one I was in last week, with no name, no phone calls, no money, and the knowledge that everybody he ever knew is aware of why. I do not want him to die, Dominic. I want him to have to live. I want him to have to live for a long time and to know, every day, that the woman who ended him was the one whose mother he tried to shut up. She was, she realized, shaking. Not the way she had been shaking on the balcony, a different way, a deeper, cleaner way, a way that came from somewhere older than she was. And I want the FBI, she added, to have the folder. Remy, at the window, looked up. Dominic, she said, I'm going to walk your brother's folder, this folder, into the same building my mother walked into 7 years ago. I'm going to put it on the same man's desk, if he still has a desk, and if he does not, then onto the desk of the person who sits at it now. Vincent Halston is not going to be destroyed by Dominic Russo. Dominic Russo is the man who is going to stand with me in the lobby. Vincent Halston is going to be destroyed by my mother. 7 years late. I want him to know that. I want that to be the last thing he knows. Dominic stared at her. He did not say anything for a long time. Chloe, he said at last, and his voice was very careful. If you do that, it will mean the end of a great many arrangements in this city. Not just Halston's. Other men will pull back, your father among them. It will not simply clean your mother's name. It will set a line across the whole city, and my name will be under that line, and so will yours. Some of it will be good, some of it will not. I will not be able to protect you from all of it. I am not asking you to protect me from all of it. Chloe, I am asking you to be in the lobby. He closed his eyes for a second. I will be in the lobby, he said. Good. Chloe. Yes. Your father. I know. He will understand very quickly what has happened. He will run, or he will try to. Let him. Chloe, he is still. Dominic, let him. He will not go far. He does not know how to live without his friends, and his friends are about to stop answering their phones. He will sit in whatever house he has left, and he will watch his name come off every door in Manhattan, and he will understand finally what he did. And that is enough. I will not have him killed, and I will not have him hunted, because he is still the only father I have, however badly he has done the job. You let him see it. That is his punishment. Let him see it. Sophia on the ottoman covered her mouth with her hand. All right, Dominic said softly. All right. One more thing. Yes. My mother's grave. What about it? It's in Queens, in a cemetery by the highway. There is a small headstone. My father would not pay for a bigger one. After all of this is over, when the noise is gone, I want a better one. Not showy, not big, just decent. And I want a bench put beside it, because her sister Dana is still alive, Dominic, and I am going to find her, and I am going to take her to her sister's grave, and I would like for her to be able to sit down. That's all. Chloe. Yes. You will have all of it. Okay. She nodded. She nodded once. Then she opened the folder back up, and she turned the first page, and she began carefully to read. She read every page of it. It took her almost an hour. She did not rush, and nobody in the room rushed her. Sophia poured her a glass of water at some point. Dominic brought her a blanket without asking, because the room had gotten colder. Remy quietly slipped out and came back in twice, checking something on his phone. Lorenzo did not move from the door. When she finished, she closed the folder again. She set her hand on top of it. Tomorrow morning, she said. Not tonight. I want one good night of sleep first. Tomorrow morning at 9, I'm going in. All right, Dominic said. Remy. Remy looked up. Will you come too? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Welcome, ma'am. Dominic? Yes. I'm going to sleep upstairs tonight. He looked at her carefully. All right. I want you to sleep upstairs too. The room went absolutely still. Chloe, I am not asking for anything you're thinking I am asking for, she said, and her voice was quiet, but it was steady. I am asking because I do not want to be on that floor by myself tonight, and I do not want you to be on a couch by yourself tonight, and I do not want either of us to pretend for one more night that we are two strangers who happen to own the same apartment. I am asking you to lie down next to me and sleep. Nothing else. Nothing tonight. Maybe nothing for a while. I do not know yet. But I know I do not want to be alone upstairs tonight, Dominic, and I know I do not want you to be alone either. Dominic Russo looked at her across the library. All right, he said. Sophia on the ottoman was openly crying now, and she was not trying to hide it. Chloe stood up. She handed the folder to Remy. She kissed Sophia's hair. She walked past Lorenzo, who inclined his head to her the way he had inclined it the first morning in the car. She climbed the stairs. She heard Dominic follow her some minutes later, after he had said quiet things to the people who were still in his library. Upstairs, she changed in the bathroom. A soft t-shirt, old flannel pants. She washed her face. She brushed her teeth. She looked at herself in the mirror, and the woman in the mirror was pale and very tired and very young, and her eyes were dry. When she came back into the bedroom, Dominic had turned down one side of the bed and was sitting on the edge of it in a t-shirt and drawstring pants of his own, his elbows on his knees, waiting for her. He looked up. Still sure, he said. Still sure. She got into the bed on the other side. The sheets were cool. The pillows were too many. She shoved 3 of them onto the floor without ceremony, and she heard a small, amused breath out of him. What? Nothing. Don't nothing me. I have never seen anybody throw my pillows on the floor before. Get better pillows. I might. She lay down. He reached across and turned off the lamp. The room went dim. Just the glow of the city through the curtain. The bed was huge. He was on his side of it. She was on hers. There was a whole field between them. Dominic. Yes. Closer, please. He shifted closer. Not much, just so that his shoulder was near enough to hers that she could feel the heat of him. He did not touch her. She turned on her side toward him, and in the dim light she could see the line of his profile against the pillow, the gray eyes open, looking up at the ceiling. Dominic? Yes. Do you think she would be proud of me? Who, sweetheart? My mother. He turned his head. His face was very close to hers now in the dark. Chloe Russo, he said. Quiet, certain. I think your mother would have taken one look at you tonight in my library, and she would have decided that she did the best work of her life when she made you. I think she would be proud of you the way I have not known how to be proud of anybody. I think you will hear her being proud of you tomorrow in that lobby, and in every lobby after it for the rest of your life. That is what I think. She did not cry. She had thought she was going to. She didn't. She put her hand on the sheet between them, palm up, and he looked at it for a moment, and then put his palm down on hers, his fingers curling through hers, and that was it. That was all of the touching there was going to be that night. And it was enough. More than enough. Good night, Dominic. Good night, Chloe. She fell asleep with her hand in his, and she slept through the night, and when she woke, it was light in the windows, and the city was loud the way the city is loud on a weekday morning, and Dominic was already up. She heard his voice, low, on a phone call somewhere down the hall, and the folder was on the kitchen counter, and at 9 o'clock she put on the cream dress from her wedding because it was the most honest thing she owned, and she walked out of her husband's apartment on her husband's arm into a long black car, and they drove, with Remy in the front passenger seat and Lorenzo at the wheel, to a gray building on a gray street, and she carried her mother, folded in a folder, through the front doors. She did not cry in the lobby. She did not cry in the elevator. She did not cry in the office of the woman who took the folder from her, a woman in her 50s with tired, kind eyes who looked at the first 3 pages in silence and then looked up at Chloe and said, Mrs. Russo, can I get you water? No, thank you. Take your time. I've taken it. All right. I just have one thing to say, and then I would like to answer any questions you have. Please. Chloe sat very straight. She looked at the woman across the desk. She thought about her mother, in a cheap hospital bed, watching the ceiling. My mother's name, she said, was Elena Dominguez Bennett. She walked into this building 7 years ago to tell a man on the 12th floor what she knew about Vincent Halston. She was not a witness. She was not an informant. She was a music teacher who had figured out that somebody she had met socially was hurting people, and who could not live with herself if she did not say. I am not here to replace her. I am here to finish what she started. Everything she knew is in the folder in front of you. Everything she did not know, but I have since learned, is also in the folder in front of you. I'm not going to ask you what happens next. I'm going to ask only one thing. Yes, Mrs. Russo. When you write this up, wherever her name goes, I want it to go in twice. Once at the beginning, because she was the one who began it. Once at the end, because she was the one who paid for it. That is all I ask. The woman across the desk looked at her for a long moment. Mrs. Russo, she said quietly, I will write it myself. Thank you. Chloe stood up. Dominic stood beside her. Remy, at the door, inclined his head. At the elevator, the woman caught up to them. She had the folder under her arm, and she was a little out of breath, and she said, Mrs. Russo, I'm sorry, one last thing. Yes, your mother. On her first visit, she asked the agent at the time whether anyone ever got to see the end of the things they started. I would like, if it is not inappropriate, I would like to tell you that today, with you walking out of this lobby, she just did. Chloe could not speak for a moment. She nodded. She held out her hand. The woman shook it. They stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. In the reflection of the polished steel, Chloe saw a woman she did not quite recognize. A young woman in a cream dress with her husband beside her and her mother's name still in her mouth. And the woman in the reflection looked, for the first time in 22 years, like someone who had not been lost. They walked out into the sun. There was a small crowd on the sidewalk, because of course there was. Because you did not walk Dominic Russo into a federal building in the middle of the morning and keep it quiet. There were cameras. There were voices. There were men Chloe did not know shouting her name, and once shouting her father's. She did not look down. She did not duck her head. She walked to the car with her hand in Dominic's, and she got in, and Lorenzo closed the door behind her. And as the car pulled away from the curb, she looked out the window at the city that had spent 22 years telling her she was nothing, and she did not any longer believe a word of it. The city did not fall apart in a single afternoon. That was the part the movies always got wrong. When the rot ran this deep, it did not collapse. It peeled, slowly, like old wallpaper in a humid room, one edge lifting at a time, until you could see what had always been underneath. By Friday morning, the first arrests had been made. Chloe watched them on television, standing barefoot in the kitchen of the apartment with a coffee cup going cold in her hand. A man she had never met in person, but whose face she knew from a single photograph in the folder, was being led out of a townhouse on the Upper West Side by 4 agents in blue jackets. He was not Vincent Halston. Halston was too careful a man to be taken in the first wave, but the man in the photograph was his right hand, and he had been, according to Dominic's folder, in the room when certain decisions about Elena Dominguez Bennett's medication had been discussed. Dominic came into the kitchen behind her. He did not say anything. He set his hand on her lower back, a small, steady weight, and he watched the television with her for a moment, and then he reached past her and turned it off. "Don't watch the whole day," he said. "You'll make yourself sick. I want to see him." Halston. "Yes. You will." "When?" 3 days, 4 at most. He's trying to get on a plane. He won't make the plane." "How do you know?" "Because I bought the plane, Chloe." She looked up at him. "You bought the plane?" "I bought the pilot, technically. The plane is the pilot's. The pilot is mine." "Dominic?" "Yes." "You are a ridiculous person." "I know. Come have coffee with me before you go to your ridiculous job." He came. He sat across from her at the kitchen counter in his shirt sleeves, his jacket over the back of the other stool, and they drank their coffee in the kind of silence that married people have. And Chloe realized, with something that was not quite a smile, that they had been married for 10 days, and this was the first morning that had felt, in the dumbest and quietest and most ordinary way, like theirs. It was also the last morning that would feel ordinary for a little while. Her father was arrested on Saturday. It was not a dramatic arrest. There were no helicopters. There were no handcuffs on the front steps for the cameras. Arthur Bennett was, by then, not stupid enough to be somewhere public. The arrest happened in his study at 10:40 in the morning, and Chloe only heard about it because Dominic, at his desk in the apartment, took a phone call, listened for 30 seconds, said, "Thank you," and then walked into the living room where Chloe was sitting with a book she was not reading. "Chloe, yes, it's done. They have him." She set the book down. She did not feel what she had expected to feel. She had expected relief. She had expected, in some darker room of herself, pleasure. She felt neither. She felt something quieter and more tired and a little sad. Okay. He's going to be charged with obstruction, with conspiracy, with 2 other things that may or may not stick. He is not going to be charged with your mother's death directly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I want you to know that in advance. The evidence we have on him for that specifically is not the kind that a jury can be given cleanly. That is the truth, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Okay, but he will not walk out of this a free man. I want you to know that too. Not this year. Probably not this decade. Okay. Chloe. I'm all right, Dominic. I'm all right. I thought this was going to feel like... I don't know what I thought it was going to feel like. It doesn't feel like that. What does it feel like? It feels like somebody told me a door I thought was open was closed, and I already knew it was closed. It feels like being a little sad that I bothered having a feeling about it at all. He sat down next to her on the couch. He did not touch her. He just sat. That's allowed, he said. Being sad about my father. Being any of the things you are, about any of the things he was. He was still your father, Chloe. You are allowed to be sad. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to feel nothing. You are allowed to feel all 3 at the same time, which is what I think you feel, because that is usually how it goes. You do not have to pick. She leaned her head against his shoulder. It was the first time she had done that without thinking about it. It was the first time, perhaps, that she had done any single thing with him without thinking about it. She felt him register it, a small held breath, a settling, and then he just let her head stay there. Dominic. Yes. Does he get to have a visitor? Yes. I want to go. He was quiet. Chloe, not to forgive him. Don't look at me like that. I am not going to forgive him. I am going once, and I am going to say the 3 things I have been carrying around in my chest for 22 years, and then I am going to leave, and I am not going to go back. That is what I want. All right. Will you take me? I can't sit in the room with you. They won't allow it. I know. I mean, will you drive me there? Will you wait in the car? Of course. Thank you. Chloe. Yes. I will wait in the car for you for the rest of my life, if you ask me to. She laughed, a small cracked laugh against his shoulder. That's not what marriage is supposed to be. Tell me what marriage is supposed to be. I don't know. I didn't come from a good one. I didn't come from a good anything. Then we'll invent it. Invent it? Yes, why not? Other people did. Not. Vincent Halston was arrested on Tuesday morning at an airstrip in Westchester, climbing onto a small plane with a suitcase in his hand and his passport in his jacket pocket. He was 67 years old. He was wearing a camel coat Chloe had seen on him the first time she had ever met him at her father's Christmas party when she was 15, and his shoes, reportedly, had been untied. She did not see the arrest. She saw the photograph later on the front page of 3 newspapers. He was being walked across tarmac by 2 agents. His head was down, his coat was open. He looked in the photograph exactly like what he was, an old man who had finally, after a lifetime of having other men take his consequences for him, been handed a very small, very neat pair of his own. Chloe cut the photograph out of the paper. She folded it once. She put it in the drawer of her nightstand. She did not know yet what she was going to do with it. She thought maybe one day she would put it in the folder with the sundress photograph so that the 2 pictures could sit together. Her mother and the man who had killed her mother in the same drawer, and her mother, now the one who was free. She visited her father on a Thursday, late in the afternoon. It was a federal holding facility north of the city, a low-tan building with chain link around it and fluorescent light inside. Dominic drove her. He parked. He turned off the car. He looked at her. Chloe, I'm all right. Don't be all right. Be whatever you are. I don't know what I am. Then be that. She got out. She walked across the parking lot in her cream dress, the wedding dress again. She seemed to have become the kind of woman who wore one dress for the turning points, and she signed in at a window and she sat at a bolted-down table in a small room with green walls, and 2 minutes later they walked her father in. Arthur Bennett in prison clothes was a sight she had not been prepared for. He was smaller. His hair had not been dyed in the 2 weeks since he had last been free, and there was more gray at the temples than she had ever seen. His hands were folded in front of him. He did not look up at her at first. When he did, his eyes were not angry. They were not warm either. They were empty. They were the eyes of a man who had finally run out of stories to tell himself about the man he was. Chloe, Arthur, thank you for coming. Don't. All right? I have 3 things I came to say, she said. Her voice was steady. Then I am going to leave. I am not going to argue with you. I am not going to answer your questions. If you try to speak while I am speaking, I am going to stand up and walk out, and I am not going to come back. So please, for once in your life, just listen to me. He nodded. First thing, my mother went to the FBI because she was braver than you ever were. You knew who you worked for. You knew who your friends were. You knew what they did. You went to cocktail parties with them anyway, because they made you rich, and because being rich was the only thing about you that you ever actually liked. My mother knew them for 4 years before she knew enough to be frightened of them. And the second she was frightened of them, she tried to stop them. You had 30 years. Arthur, you were never frightened of them. You should have been. Her father's jaw worked, but he did not speak. Second thing, you had 72 hours to save her. I know now. You had 72 hours and a phone and a car and any hospital in any state, and you had a name on a piece of paper that would have opened any door for her. You used those 72 hours to go to lunch, I have the schedule. I have read it. You ate at Maria on the Tuesday and at Daniel on the Wednesday, and you had Thursday morning open until 10:30. That was the morning she died. You could have been holding her hand when she died, Arthur. You were not in the room, and you were not in the hospital, and you were not even in the borough. That is something I will not forgive you for. Not today, not next year, not ever. I am not going to pretend I might. I am telling you now, so you do not have to spend whatever years you have left in here hoping. Her father's eyes had filled, which she had not expected. He did not make a sound. The tears slid down his face into the orange collar of the shirt. Third thing. She paused. This was the part she had not practiced. This was the part she had not known how to say until she was in the room, and now that she was, she found that she did know because she had been rehearsing it in her body her entire life. I forgive myself. Her father lifted his head. I forgive myself, she said, for spending 22 years of my life trying to be worthy of being your daughter, for going to those parties when you called, for wearing the dresses your wife gave me, for letting the men in your world put their hands on me because I was too ashamed to make a sound about it, for believing, as late as 2 weeks ago, that if I just found the right thing to say, the right way to smile, the right amount of small I could make myself, you would one day look at me the way you looked at every other thing you owned. I forgive myself for that, Arthur. I do not forgive you. I forgive me. For not knowing, for a very long time, that I was not the thing in the room that needed changing. You were. She stood up. That is all? Her father lifted a hand halfway and put it back down. Chloe, no, Arthur. Sweetheart, please, no. Chloe, I loved your mother. Arthur, listen to me. I believe you. I believe that you did, in whatever way a man like you is capable of loving anybody. I believe you loved her, and I believe you loved me, and I believe that the love was, the entire time, smaller than the other things you loved more. That is what I believe, and that is why I am leaving this room now, and that is why I am not coming back. Because if what you loved was not enough to move you to a phone on a Tuesday, I'm not going to sit in another room with you and pretend that it is enough to move me to the next chair. She walked to the door. She stopped. She turned. I hope, she said, and her voice was quiet and steady, that you spend whatever years are left sitting with the fact that my mother's name, Arthur, Elena, is going to be on a wing of a hospital in the Bronx within 18 months. I am paying for it. With money that is not yours. I am going to name a maternity wing after her, because she was a mother, Arthur, and because you did not get to be a father to the daughter she made. I hope you think about that wing every day. I hope you think about the women in that wing every day. I hope you think about how they will live, because your wife was brave and because you were not. That is what I hope for you. That is the only thing I hope for you. Goodbye. She walked out of the room. She did not look back. She signed out at the window with a hand that was not shaking. She walked across the parking lot. She got into the car. Dominic, who had been waiting with his phone on his lap, not playing with it, just sitting, looked up at her. He did not ask. Home, she said. Home. He started the car. Halfway back to the city on the Henry Hudson, she said very quietly, I think I am going to sleep for a week. Take 2. I might. Take as long as you need. Dominic, yes. I'm okay. He glanced at her. I can tell, he said. She slept, and she did not sleep for a week. But she slept for a long time that night, and she woke the next morning and the weight in her chest had moved. Not gone. Moved. It had been sitting for 22 years on the front of her lungs, and that morning she woke up and noticed, with something like surprise, that she could take a full breath without having to think about it. She lay in the dark of the bedroom with Dominic asleep beside her. He had, at some point in the last week, migrated from the guest room to the bed without it having been a discussion, and she had not asked him to leave. And she breathed in and out, all the way to the bottom of her lungs and back. And she did not cry. There were, after that, many mornings. Not all of them were easy. Some of them were very hard. She had nightmares for a long time. More nightmares, in fact, in the first 6 months of safety than she had ever had in 22 years of not being safe. Her body, it seemed, had been holding the fear until it had permission to feel it, and now, with permission, it was making up for lost time. She would wake, some nights, with her heart pounding. and Dominic would already be half upright beside her, having learned the rhythm of her breathing in his sleep, and he would say quietly, "You're in the apartment. Nobody is here." It's 4 in the morning, and she would lie back down, and her hand would find his under the covers, and she would go back to sleep. Slowly, over months, the nightmares got further apart. She met her Aunt Dana in a diner in Teaneck, New Jersey, on a Saturday in February. Her aunt was 58. Her aunt had her mother's hands, which was a thing Chloe had to step outside for a moment to breathe about. Her aunt had genuinely not known about Elena's death, had been told by the cousin who had put Elena in touch with the agent that Elena had died of an illness, full stop, and had not been told about the rest until that Saturday morning. Her aunt cried for 20 minutes straight, in a booth, into a coffee cup. Chloe sat across from her and held both of her hands and did not talk. And when her aunt was done, she said, "I would like to know you, Aunt Dana, if you would like to know me." And her aunt had said, "Baby, I have been waiting for 22 years. Chloe took her aunt to the cemetery in April. The new headstone had been set. The bench was beside it, granite, simple, with her mother's name and her mother's dates, and below them, a line in small letters that Chloe had chosen herself. She tried to stop it. Her aunt sat on the bench for a long time. Chloe stood at the foot of the grave, with one hand on the top of the stone, and she let her aunt be alone with her sister for the first time in 30 years. Later, in the car, Dana said, "Your mother used to sing to you when you were a baby. Did anybody ever tell you?" "No." "She did. There was a song. I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but I remember she sang it. You wouldn't sleep otherwise." "I don't remember." "You were very small. Of course you don't. But somebody sang to you, Chloe. I just wanted you to know. Somebody sang to you. You were a baby that somebody sang to." Chloe drove the rest of the way home in silence, and when she walked into the apartment, Dominic took one look at her face and did not ask. He just sat her down on the couch, and he made her tea, and he sat beside her while she sat with the idea that somebody had sung to her once, when she had been small enough that she could not remember, and had not known that she would have to remember it later by herself. 6 months after the wedding, she began to build. It started small. She used money from a trust her mother's family had left her mother. Money Arthur, astonishingly, had never managed to get his hands on, because her mother had been smarter than he had ever given her credit for. And she rented 2 rooms in a community center in the Bronx, 10 blocks from the hospital her mother had died in. She hired 2 women, one a piano teacher who had known her mother, and one a social worker who had worked with domestic violence cases for 20 years. And she opened a program on Tuesdays and Thursdays for girls between the ages of 12 and 18. Free. No paperwork. You just showed up. The program did 2 things. It taught piano badly because the piano teacher was patient and the girls were not. And it gave the girls, in a small back office, once a week, if they wanted, a woman to sit with. Just to sit with. A woman who had a coffee pot and a couch and no agenda. The social worker ran the couch. The piano ran everywhere else. In the first month, 4 girls came. In the 6th month, 41. In the second year, there were 2 locations, and a line down the block on the first Tuesday of every month. And Chloe had stopped trying to do the math in her head on how many girls had come through, because the number was making her cry in places where she did not have time to cry. She was 24 by then. She had cut her hair. She wore flat shoes mostly, and big coats, and she ran the program's finances herself out of a small office she had set up on the 4th floor of a building in Harlem. Dominic's lawyers had tried, gently, to take the accounting off her hands. She had told them, less gently, that she had done the books at a diner on 32nd Street for 3 years, and she was perfectly capable of keeping track of $300,000 in a nonprofit, thank you, and they had stopped offering. She was, it turned out, extremely good at it. She was also, it turned out, extremely good at other things she had not known she would be good at. She was good at sitting down with men who were afraid of her husband and getting them to do favors for the program without feeling pressured. She was good at walking into a fundraising dinner at the Waldorf and being the woman in the room everyone wanted to talk to, which was a trick, it turned out, not of beauty or of money, but of listening. She was good at remembering the names of every single girl who had come through the program and the name of at least one of each girl's siblings. She was good, and this she would have denied if anyone had said it to her out loud, at politics. By her third year, married to Dominic, she had become something in the city that she did not quite have a word for. She was not a socialite. She was not a philanthropist exactly, though the newspapers eventually settled on the word. She was not, ever, despite what certain tabloids insisted on trying to make her husband's accessory. She was something else. She was a woman people in the city had started to ask advice from. She was a woman whose calls got returned. She was a woman who had, on more than one occasion, sat across a table from a judge or a deputy mayor or a banker and said, very quietly, I would consider this a personal favor, and had watched the other person reach immediately for a pen. She had power. It had come, not all at once, but slowly, over 3 years, the way some plants grow. You did not see it happen, and then one day you looked up and realized it had been happening the whole time. She had become, in her own right, something people in her city respected and a little feared. The strange part, the part she thought about, sometimes late at night, was that she had become this almost by accident. She had not set out to build an empire. She had set out to build a back office with a couch in the Bronx and to put her mother's name on a hospital wing. Everything else had come because people had kept showing up at the door, and she had kept saying, all right, come in. What do you need? Her husband, for his part, was becoming someone else too. The Russo family business, the parts of it that had made her husband, on the night she had met him, the most dangerous man in a ballroom, had been changing quietly for a long time. Dominic did not speak about it much, and Chloe, on principle, did not ask about what he did not volunteer. But she noticed things. She noticed that Lorenzo was driving less, and that there was now a driver named Tomas who handled most of the daylight hours, and that Lorenzo was running, for lack of a better term, an office. She noticed that the men who came and went from the apartment were different men than they had been in the first year. The men in the first year had been soldiers. The men in the third year were lawyers and accountants, and one extremely polite Greek shipping heiress who had, on her second visit, complimented Chloe's shoes. She noticed that Dominic was on fewer phone calls late at night, and that when he was on one, the phone calls were shorter. She noticed, most of all, that he slept. For the first 6 months of her marriage, she had almost never woken in the night without finding him already awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. By the second year, he was asleep when she woke most nights. By the third year, he snored lightly on his left side, and she had started teasing him about it, and he had started denying it, and that was, she realized, what people meant when they said a marriage. On the 4th anniversary of their wedding, Sophia threw them a dinner. Not a party, a dinner. Sophia's kitchen, the same kitchen where Chloe had shelled nothing and watched Dominic shell snap peas 4 years before. Paolo made a roast. Luca, now 8, had lost a front tooth and would not stop showing people the hole. The baby, who had been named, after considerable argument, Elena, was 3 and built like a small truck. Reina came, because Reina was not a guest anymore. Reina was a fixture. Aunt Dana came, from Teaneck, with a bottle of bad wine and a bowl of potato salad. Nobody ate. Lorenzo came, with his wife, who had recovered from her sickness 7 years before and who had hands that never stopped moving. Remy came, because Remy came to anything Chloe asked him to come to, and he sat in the corner with a beer and talked quietly with Paolo about construction costs. It was, Chloe thought, sitting at the long scratch table, with her niece Elena attempting to climb into her lap with a piece of bread in each fist, the best room she had ever been in. Near the end of the evening, Sophia raised a glass. She did not get up. She did not do a speech. She lifted her glass at her end of the table and she said, to 4 years of Chloe being in this family, and not a single one of them easy, and not a single one of them unappreciated. Everyone drank. Chloe, her eyes stinging, drank. Dominic, beside her, set down his glass. He looked at her for a long moment over the candles. Chloe, he said quietly, so that just she could hear it. 4 years ago tomorrow, you were standing in a ballroom in a dress that did not fit. And I walked in, and you did not cry. Every single thing I have built in the last 4 years, I have built because you did not cry in that ballroom. I want you to know that. I don't know if I have said it to you yet out loud. I am saying it now. You are the reason I have a life I recognize. You are the reason I sleep. You are the reason my sister laughs in her own kitchen. I was going to be a different man, Chloe. I was going to be a worse one. I married you because I thought I needed a wife. I have stayed married to you because I figured out somewhere in the first 6 months that what I had actually needed was a person who would look at me when I came home and tell me the truth. You have done that every single day. I do not take it for granted. I will never take it for granted. That is all." Chloe could not speak. She put her hand over his under the table. "You are not allowed," she said, "to make speeches at dinner. I know. You are not the speech person in this marriage. I know. I'm not going to be able to top that. You don't have to. I love you, Dominic. I know. Say it back. I love you, Chloe Russo." "Okay. Okay." Luca, 8 years old, across the table, made a loud gagging sound and said, "Uncle Dom." And the whole table laughed. Later, much later, after everyone had gone home and the baby was asleep upstairs, and Sophia and Paolo had gone to bed, and the two of them were walking down the stoop to the car in the cold, Chloe stopped on the sidewalk. "Dominic." "Yes." "I want to tell you something I have not told anyone." "All right. I am pregnant." He went very still. "Chloe." I am. I took the test on Tuesday. I took another one on Wednesday. I took a third on Thursday because the first two made me cry, and I wanted to be sure. I made an appointment for next week. I wanted to tell you tonight because tonight was the right night." "How far along?" 9 weeks, maybe 10. Dominic Russo, the most dangerous man in the city, the man who had walked into a ballroom 4 years before and turned everything upside down with a sentence, stood on a sidewalk in Brooklyn and forgot, for a second, how to use his face. Then he sat down on the step. "Dominic, give me a minute. Are you all right?" Yes, give me a minute." She sat down next to him on the step. Lorenzo, at the car, discreetly turned his back and looked at the sky. "Dominic, I'm sorry, it's just—" He laughed, which was not a sound she heard often. "It's just that I was prepared. I was prepared for you to tell me that. I thought I was prepared, and I'm not. I have been making a crib in my head for 2 years, and I am not prepared at all. You've been making a crib in your head. It's oak." "Oak?" "My father made my crib. It was oak. I thought I don't know. I thought I thought I would make one." Chloe leaned her head against his shoulder. "Make me a crib, Dominic Russo." "Okay. And name them after my mother, if they're a girl." "Okay. And after your father, if they're a boy. I know you didn't always— I know it was complicated, but he was your father, and he raised you, and you are good. So." He pressed his face for one brief second into her hair. "Okay," he said. "Okay." They sat on the step for a long time in the cold, the way people sit on steps when the world has just gotten bigger, and they did not speak, because there was nothing left to say that the silence was not saying better. Eventually, they went home. Their daughter was born the following summer. She was named Elena, of course, a second Elena in the family, which nobody minded because both Elenas had been brave, and she came into the world at 8 pounds and 3 ounces, with a shock of dark hair and the lung capacity of a woman twice her size. Sophia held her before Chloe did, because Chloe was exhausted and Sophia was already crying, and Sophia said into the baby's hair, "Oh, you are going to be trouble. I already know." She was. She was trouble in all the best ways. She was loud and funny and stubborn. She demanded to be taken seriously at 4, and by the time she was 7, she had conned Dominic into buying her a piano, a full upright that he carried into the apartment himself up the service elevator, and Chloe had watched him carry it and had cried quietly in the kitchen, because her mother would have loved the sound of it going by on the landing. Elena learned to play piano badly at first, and then, as it turned out, very well, because she had her grandmother's ear apparently, and because her mother taught her scales sitting at the bench beside her, the same way her grandmother had taught Sophia Russo Martelli 40 years before. On Elena's 9th birthday, she played a recital in the community center in the Bronx, in the first room Chloe had ever rented, in front of a room of girls who had come through the program, and their mothers and aunts and sisters, and she played a song her mother had taught her, and when she finished, every single person in the room stood up and clapped for her, and Chloe, sitting in the front row with her husband's hand in hers, thought, This is what my mother meant. This is what she tried to build in a church basement for free for 20 years. This, a room of girls standing up to clap for one of their own. Her son Arturo was born 3 years after Elena. He was named for Dominic's father and not for hers, and she did not, she would realize later, even hesitate when they picked it. Her own father had written her from prison twice in those years. She had not answered either letter. She had not opened the second one. She was not cruel about it. She was not even angry anymore. She had simply, finally, put him down. The way you put down a weight you had been carrying because you had forgotten it was yours to put down. He would die, Chloe would later learn, when she was 38, in the medical wing of a federal facility upstate. She would send flowers, that was all. She would send white flowers, and she would sign a card with only her name, and Aunt Dana, who by then was 72 and living with them in the apartment, would kiss her on the top of the head when she heard, and would not say a word. The neighborhood people called Chloe many things over the years. The tabloids called her the bastard bride of the Russo Empire for one cruel summer, and she laughed about it, because by then she had stopped caring what the tabloids called her. The society pages called her the most powerful woman in New York, which was a bigger lie than bastard bride, because there were many powerful women in New York, and Chloe had made a point of knowing most of them. The girls at the community center called her, simply, Miss Chloe, and that was the name she answered to the fastest, and that was the name she kept. She stood, one evening late in her 30s, on the small stone balcony of her apartment, watching the park go dark. Dominic was inside, on a phone call that was probably about nothing, because by then most of his phone calls were about nothing dangerous anymore, which was its own kind of victory. Elena was at piano practice. Arturo was in the kitchen trying to convince Inez to give him a cookie before dinner. Somewhere down in the city, in a small back room, a girl was sitting down on a couch across from a social worker for the first time. Somewhere in a hospital in the Bronx, a woman was holding her newborn child on a floor whose name was Elena Dominguez Bennett, maternity wing, and the woman did not know who Elena Dominguez Bennett had been, but her daughter had been born on the floor with her name on it, and that was, Chloe thought, enough. She thought sometimes about that first balcony, the one 7 years ago, 8 now. She kept losing track. At her father's house, in the wine-colored dress, with Halston's hand on her wrist. She thought about the girl who had stood there. She thought about the woman who stood here. They were not, she had long since realized, entirely the same person. The girl had been afraid and small and always sorry for taking up space. The woman was a mother of 2 and a wife, and the head of a nonprofit with 3 branches, and on quiet terms with 3 senators, and the legal co-owner of a shipping company she had never set foot on the deck of, and the guardian of an aunt who had, all those years later, remembered the name of the song Chloe's mother had sung to her as a baby, and had taught it to Chloe, and Chloe had sung it to her own daughter, and now her own daughter knew it, and now the song would go on. That was the thing, Chloe thought, leaning her elbows on the railing. That was the only thing, in the end, that mattered. Everybody wanted, when they were young, to be the person nobody could hurt. Everybody wanted to be big enough, fast enough, rich enough, loved enough, feared enough that nothing in the world could touch them. That was not possible. She understood that now. You could not make yourself untouchable. Her mother had tried, in her own small way, tried to be quiet enough, careful enough, patient enough, and her mother had still been killed in a cracked vinyl hospital bed for the sin of trying to tell the truth. What you could do, instead, was become the kind of person who, when the world hurt you, did not let the hurt go back out into the world as worse. You could take what had been done to you and put it down in a room with a couch. You could take the name of a woman who had been killed for trying to say one true thing, and you could put it on a wing of a hospital and let thousands of other women's names be written down, for good reasons, on forms under that name. You could stand in a lobby with a folder. You could sit in a room across from your father in prison, and you could not forgive him, and you could still not become him. You could marry a dangerous man and refuse daily to become a dangerous woman. Refuse no matter how much power settled on your shoulders, to become the thing that had sat on your shoulders for 22 years. You could be, at 50, the kind of woman a 12-year-old girl walked up to at a community center and said, "Miss Chloe?" And you could sit down on a bench next to that girl and you could say, "Tell me," and you could mean it. That was the work. That was what a life was for. Behind her, the balcony door slid open. Chloe? Dinner. Coming. You all right out here? Yes. Come in. It's cold. Yes. I love you. I know. Say it back. She turned. Dominic Russo, 42, his temples gray now, his jaw still a jaw carved by someone who had paid attention, was standing in the doorway in a sweater Luca had given him for his last birthday. He was not dangerous anymore. He was, to most of the city, merely important. To her, he was the man who had brought her a photograph of her mother, the man who had shelled snap peas in his sister's kitchen, the man who had, when she had asked, waited in the car. I love you, she said. Okay, don't be smug. I'm not. You are. A little. Come here. He came. He stood beside her at the railing. She did not turn her head. She leaned slightly so that her shoulder touched his. Below them, the park was lighting up, lamp by lamp, the way it had been lighting up, lamp by lamp, for 150 years. The city went on, the way it always did. Up in their apartment, a 7-year-old boy was negotiating a cookie with an 80-year-old woman. Somewhere, a girl was playing her first scale badly, 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 and then, on the 1000th try, correctly. Somewhere, a mother was hearing her daughter say the word carnivore for the first time. Chloe Bennett. Russo closed her eyes, and she listened for a moment to the sound of the life she had built. And she understood, finally and completely, the one thing she had come very far to learn, that the people who had told her, for 22 years, that she was nothing had not been telling her the truth about her. They had been telling her the truth about themselves. And she had, somewhere along the way, stopped listening. She opened her eyes. All right, she said, let's go in. They went in. And behind them, the door closed, and the city kept going, and the girl at the back of a community center in the Bronx sat down at a piano she did not own, and put her hands on the keys, and began very quietly to play.